Hello chess lovers! From 2019 Chess.com Pro Chess League, I want to share with you a dramatic game played between Fabiano Caruana and Shant Sargsyan. Let's see what happened on the board. Caruana, who had white pieces, opened up with e4 and Sargsyan responded with e5. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. We have the Ruy Lopez a6, Morphy defense, bishop a4, knight f6, d3. We have the Anderson variation, bishop c5, c3, d6, knight bd2, and Sargsyan castled kingside. I have to tell you that Shant Sargsyan had this position earlier in a game against Kirill Shevchenko, where the latter proceeded with castling kingside, but in this game Caruana chose knight f1. Seeing that there is a weakness in white's camp, black knight jumped on g4 square, and Caruana played d4, established this classical center, and after e takes d4, c takes d4, Shant Sargsyan went for knight takes d4. This is the start of a devastating attack which leads to double-edged positions. I'm not sure, but it's quite possible that Shant Sargsyan had analyzed these positions earlier. Here Caruana accepted the knight sacrifice, after which we have the second knight sacrifice, guys. The second lightning strikes. What is interesting, I have to tell you that in Armenian Shant means lightning, so we can say that the second lightning strikes, and after king takes f2 we have queen f6 check, and this is a position which looks like a reversed fright lever attack. How do you like this position, guys? The king is tapping on e3 square in order to support the knight on d4. Right now black is 2 knights down, but as white king is in the center of the board, black has a huge compensation. This allows black to organize a powerful attack. Bishop g4 is on the board. Of course the bishop is untouchable. This is a powerful deflective move. In that case black can win the knight on d4. That's why after bishop g4 we have queen d2 and d5. Yes, black wants to open up the e file, but according to the engine, queen e5 is even stronger with the idea of f5. But in our game, after queen d2 f d5, now comes b4, bishop d6, and king d3. Caruana is trying to find a shelter for his king. Of course he understands that leaving his king on e3 can be catastrophic, but playing a move like queen f2 looks more solid. Offer an exchange of queens and then play bishop b2, and then if you play queen takes e4, then white king can successfully escape. But in our game, after bishop d6 we have king d3 straight away. The problem with this king d3 is that in here black could play c5, a move which could create too many problems for white. But black didn't go for this, although let's take a quick look at one of the possible lines. If bishop b2, then d takes e4 check is coming. And yes, this is a position which is very pleasant to play with the black pieces. But in our game, after king d3 we have d takes e4 check, king c2, c5, knight e3. White is counter-attacking black's light-squared bishop, and after c takes d4 we have knight takes g4. Yes, white's position looks scary, but let's not forget that white has 2 extra pieces. Queen e6 h3, rook c8 check, king b1 h5, bishop b3. Gradually white is starting to consolidate his position, but still the position is full of surprises and white has to be very careful. e3 discovered check, although black could even capture on g4. This is even stronger, but we have e3 check, king b2, h takes g4, bishop takes e3, rook e8, bishop f4, and bishop e7, which is a terrible mistake. Instead, it was better to play bishop takes f4 and then announce a check from e2 and then play a5. In here, white has a slight advantage, but black has a powerful attack. It's not yet over, and black had all the chances to proceed with the attack. But in our game, after bishop f4 we have bishop e7. The idea is to play bishop f6. That's why Caruana himself occupied the long diagonal with his dark squared bishop. Rook d8, queen takes g4. At this point already black's position is hopeless. Bishop takes b4 was played. Rook f1. Caruana is allowing black to win the bishop on e5, but now he will exploit the weakness of this h to g8 diagonal. Already there are some very nasty discovered threats. Here Sarkisian played rook e2 check, and after king b1 played rook e8, but after this discovered check he finally resigned. Yes, black is suffering heavy losses, that's why after the discovered check we have a resignation. A very interesting game, I think. That was actually a very daring attack by young Armenian chess grandmaster, right? After the game, Caruana called this his closest escape. Here is what he said: "The second game was really tough. It was surprisingly difficult. I didn't even know objectively what was going on." In the end, as usual, a puzzle for you, but this one is a very famous one, and I guess many of you know how to checkmate with white pieces in 2 moves. But anyways, I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. Consider checking them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers! 2019 Côte d'Ivoire Rapid and Blitz is over, and the reigning world chess champion Magnus Carlsen is the winner. I have to tell you that Carlsen won every single tournament he played in this year. Former world chess champion Garry Kasparov congratulated Carlsen in Twitter. Here is what he wrote: "Congrats to Magnus. If he is usually as unstoppable as a tank, in speed chess he is a tank with a Ferrari engine." In this video, I would like to share with you a game played by Magnus Carlsen in round 19 against Bassem Amin. This was a blitz game and Carlsen opened up with e4. Bassem Amin responded with e5, knight f3, knight c6, and we have bishop b5. Carlsen goes for Ruy Lopez a6, Morphy defense, bishop a4, knight f6, white castles kingside, bishop e7. Black is choosing the closed variations, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, d6, c3, black castles kingside, h3, knight b8. These are well analyzed positions and require a huge theoretical knowledge. Bishop c2, rook e8, knight f1, bishop f8. Black's dark squared bishop is hurrying to safeguard the king side. Knight g3, g6, bishop g5, h6. These are lines which Magnus Carlsen himself is playing a lot with the black pieces. Bishop d2, e takes d4, c takes d4, c5, d5, bishop g7, bishop f4, and queen e7. Not the best continuation. In here, playing knight b6 or queen b6 is a better choice, but in our game we have queen e7. It's not like that this is a bad move, but later in some lines black can face some problems when white will go for e5 thrust. a4 by Carlsen, knight b6, b3, b takes a4, while playing knight d7, opening up the bishop's diagonal, and then b4 looks more promising for black, but in our game we have b takes a4, b takes a4, a5, rook b1, and now it's white's rook who is occupying the b file, knight d7, queen c1, king h7, and this time we have h4. Carlsen wants to go for h5, thus trying to create more weaknesses in black's kingside. Bishop a6, h5, knight c4, and knight f1. Not the best continuation. In here Carlsen is missing a very beautiful line. He could capture on g6 and then move his knight not backward but forward. Knight f5 is a very powerful move, after which black's position goes down very quickly. Now the queen is hanging. If queen f7, then f6 discover check is coming, and yes, once white is breaking into pieces black's kingside, black won't manage to save this position. In here black can go for this trick, can remove white's attacking piece, but all in all black's position is totally lost. Let's go back, but as mentioned above, Carlsen missed his chance and played knight f1, rook b8. In here we have the exchange of rooks on b8, bishop d3, rook b4. Black got some counterplay on the queen side, knight h2. Meanwhile Carlsen is maneuvering and rook takes a4, which is a mistake. So far so good, though white had a preferable position. Black was still holding, but this rook takes a4 is a mistake. Instead, it was better to play bishop b2 and then bishop c3. In this case, black is managing to break the harmony of white pieces. But in our game, after knight h2, we have rook takes a4, and once black is getting an unprotected piece on a4, black steps into a deadly combination. Here Carlsen captured on g6, and after f takes g6 played e5. Opened up the light squared bishop's diagonal. Knight takes e5, and we have bishop takes g6 check. Now if king takes g6, then queen c2 check is coming, and once black is losing his rook, there is not much black can do. In here, understanding that his position is hopeless, Bassem Amin decided to give away his queen and get two bishops against the queen, but even this didn't help him. He soon resigned after queen c6, knight e2 check, king h1. Finally, yes, we have a resignation. Black is suffering heavy losses. Black will also lose this bishop, yes, and it's over. In the end, as usual, a chess puzzle for you. Please take a look at this position and try to find a winning line for white. I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. Consider checking them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, Suren here, and in this video I want to share with you another hyper-aggressive attacking game played by Soviet chess player Rashid Nejmetdinov. Nejmetdinov is on the black side and his opponent is Serbian chess player Dragoljub Ciric. The game was played in 1961 at Chigorin Memorial. In that same year, in 1961, Ciric would gain the international master title, and only 4 years later, in 1965, he would become a grandmaster. And now, without further ado, let's get started with our game and see what happened on the board. Ciric opened up with e4 and Nejmetdinov responded with e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. We have the Ruy Lopez a6, Morphy defense, bishop a4, d6. Nejmetdinov is choosing the modern Stalinist defense, white castles kingside. In here, the most popular move according to modern theory is bishop d7, but in our game we have bishop g4, h3, bishop h5, though black can also keep the bishop on g4 and go for this gambiting move by playing h5. And if white accepts the sacrifice, then black can gain great attacking chances, but white is not forced to capture on g4, instead can play d4, and white has a decent game, no problem at all. But in our game after h3, we have bishop h5, c3, white is preparing to establish this classical pawn center, but after knight f6, Ciric played queen e2, this is a rare continuation. Going for d4 or rook e1 is a more common continuation, but in our game we have queen e2. And to white's offbeat move, Nejmetdinov responded with a hyper-aggressive g5 move. Look at this, guys. He wants to organize a quick attack on the king side, not allowing this black pawn to step on g4. White himself played g4, but this is creating some weaknesses in white's king side. Instead, it was better to play d4. Now if g4, then h takes g4, and after bishop takes g4, white can play d5. If b5, then bishop d1. The bishop will later allow white queen to move freely, and if knight e7, then c4. White is doing okay, no problem at all. But in our game we have g4. In return, Nejmetdinov counter-attacked white bishop, b5 is on the board, bishop b3, bishop g6, d4, and this time we have h5. Yes, black proceeds with his attack, and let's see what's going to happen next. Here white won the pawn on g5, h takes g4, knight h4, and bishop h5. Here comes bishop d5. White is emphasizing the vulnerability of black knights. And it was in here that Nejmetdinov made a reckless decision. And instead of thinking about defense, for example, according to the engine, the best move is king d7. He went for a queen sacrifice and captured on d5. Look at this, guys. This is a move which Dragoljub Ciric was definitely not expecting. All he could do was to accept the queen sacrifice, after which we have knight f4. queen e3. This time we have knight takes h3 check, king g2, knight f4 check, and underestimating his chances, Dragolub Chirish decided to give back his queen and proceed with the game with the pawn down. He captured on f4, but after this move white's position is lost. Instead it was better to play king g3. If rook takes d8, then rook h1, if bishop h6, then knight f5. And according to the engine, the position is equal, though the position remains highly complex. But in our game, after knight f4 check, we have queen takes f4. Here we have e takes f4, bishop g5. Well, capturing on c7 is not a good idea, because after king d7, the dark squared bishop is finding itself out of the game, and actually it's better, yes, to keep the bishop on the king side. But anyways, even in this case, black's attack is decisive. Black has an extra pawn and still nice attacking chances on the king side. Here we have bishop e7. Najmetdinov is getting rid of white's dark squared bishop. Knight d2, king d7. Now he's connecting his rooks, after which we have f6. This time he's freeing this f7 square for the light squared bishop. b3, bishop f7, d5, rook h6. Now he will double up his rooks on the h file, rook h8, rook h1, which steps into a beautiful tactical shot. You can pause the video and try to find Najmetdinov's next move. Ready? In here, Super Nash played knight takes d5. This is a move with which he is exploiting the weakness of the long diagonal and the h file. E takes d5, bishop takes d5 check, f3, g3, and in here we have a resignation. If rook h3, then bishop e6. White is suffering heavy losses. That's why after g3 we have a resignation. In the end, as usual, let's solve a chess puzzle. Please take a look at this position and try to find the winning line for white. I will wait for your answer in the comment section. By the way, this position is also taken from a game played by Rashid Najmetdinov. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. Feel free to check them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Hello chess lovers, let's have a look at another game played by Alpha Zero. This time, this intelligent creature is on the black side, and the question arises, which openings does it prefer with the black pieces? Now it turns out that in the early games, Alpha Zero was quite enthusiastic about playing the French defense, but after 2 hours began to play it less and less. The Caro-Kann defense fared a good deal better until gradually it was also filtered out. So far we have only 2 games where Alpha Zero is playing with the black pieces, and believe it or not, but it chooses the Berlin defense. Let's see how it goes. Stockfish 8 started with e4 and e5 by Alpha Zero, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, Stockfish goes for the Spanish game, and knight f6. Alpha Zero goes for Berlin defense, which has a reputation of a very solid and drawish looking opening, and for its solidity it is also called the Berlin Wall. d3 by Stockfish. This move is known as the Steinitz move, with which he scored many spectacular successes during his long reign as a world champion. Bishop c5, bishop takes c6, d takes c6, white castles. The main move is bishop g4, but Alpha Zero chooses knight d7. Knight d2, black castles. Now the main move in this position for white is knight c4, attacking the pawn on e5. But in this position, instead of playing knight c4, Stockfish 8 played queen e1. I suppose this is a novelty, and honestly, it's not quite clear the idea hidden behind this move. f6 by Alpha Zero, and only now white plays knight c4. Rook f7, a4, bishop f8, king h1, knight c5, a5, knight e6, and Stockfish 8 made a very courageous decision. It captured on e5, exchanging the knight with 2 pawns, f takes e5, knight takes e5, rook f6, knight g4, rook f7, knight e5, and Alpha Zero decided not to repeat the moves and played rook e7. And now Stockfish 8 is also playing a6, damaging queenside pawn structure. Now of course b takes a6 can't be played because of this knight takes c6, forking the queen and the rook. After a6 we see c5, f4, queen e8, a takes b7, bishop takes b7. And by capturing on b7, white is damaging the pawn structure, creating these weaknesses, pawn islands. Queen a5, knight d4, queen c3, rook e6, bishop e3, rook b6, knight c4 and rook b4. Typical engine-like maneuver. As you know, engines like activating their queens or rooks and penetrate opponent's camp. Of course, from a human perspective, this may seem dangerous because at any moment your queen or rook can be trapped. But of course, we are dealing with engines which can calculate all the possible lines. We see b3 and an interesting decision by Alpha 0 a5. Honestly, I don't think that any grandmaster would give up his pawn like this. Rook takes a5, rook takes a5, knight takes a5, bishop a6, bishop takes d4, rook takes d4, knight c4, rook d8, g3, h6, queen a5, bishop c8, queen takes c7. Now as you can see, white has 4 pawns against a bishop, but is this enough to win the game? Bishop h3, rook g1, rook d7, queen e5. White is offering an exchange of queens, going for an endgame. Queen takes e5, knight takes e5, rook a7. But now this rook is going to penetrate white's camp. g5, rook c1, bishop g7, knight e5, rook a8, knight f3, bishop b2, rook b1, bishop c3, knight g1, bishop d7, knight e2, bishop d2, rook d1, bishop e3, king g2, bishop g4, rook e1. Looks like white has no definite idea how to proceed with the game. Bishop d2, rook f1, and there it goes. Finally we see rook a2 eyeing on c2 square. Alpha 0 is not hurrying to capture on e2, because if bishop takes e2, then rook f2 winning back the piece. That's why we see rook a2, h3, and only now Alpha 0 is capturing on e2. Rook f2, bishop takes f4, rook takes e2, bishop e5, rook f2, and now black is starting to centralize his king. King g7, g4, bishop d4, rook e2, king f6. Now this king is going to penetrate white's camp. This is going to be catastrophic, and white decides to play e5, give up this pawn, trying somehow to stop this king. King f3, rook a1, rook f2, rook e1, king g2 check, bishop f4, c3, rook c1, d4, rook takes c3, d takes c5, rook takes c5, b4, rook c3. White is just making moves in desperation. Gradually black is putting more and more pressure. King f6, king f2, bishop e5, rook a2, trying to create some counterplay, but already it's over. Rook a6 check, king e7, rook a5, king e6, and after rook a6 check, bishop d6, Stockfish 8 resigned. Stockfish is going to lose one more pawn and it's over. This is just winning for black. In this game we saw no impressive sacrifices by Alpha 0, and that's reasonable. This was Berlin defense. We witnessed positional chess by this monster. It just used that inaccurate knight sacrifice by Stockfish and gradually, by intensifying the pressure, won the game. I hope that you enjoyed this game. Your questions please, and thanks for watching. Good luck. The most powerful weapon in chess is to have the next move. David Bronstein. Hello chess lovers, Soren here, and in this video I would like to share with you another hyper-aggressive attacking game played by the 8th world chess champion Mikhail Tal. His opponent is Chilean international master René Letelier Martner, and the game was played in 1963 at the Second Capablanca Memorial. But before starting our game, if you are new to my channel, consider subscribing in order not to miss my future uploads. And now without further ado, let's get started with our game and see what happened on the board. Tal opened up with e4 and Letelier responded with e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, we have the Ruy Lopez a6, Morphy defense, bishop a4 and d6, black is choosing the modern Steinitz defense. The difference between the modern Steinitz defense and old Steinitz defense is that in old Steinitz defense, black goes for d6 straight away instead of playing a6, but this is a more preferable line because in this case, black still keeps the chance of going for b5, breaking the pin, and also with this d6 move, black is managing to save the central e5 pawn. Here Tal played c3, and here is how he comments this move. At that time, this was considered the main continuation. Castling kingside was only just coming into fashion. My opponent, to judge by the early rounds of the tournament, regarded opening problems as an unavoidable evil, and therefore I decided that I could confidently go in for a theoretical battle. Bishop d7 by Letelier, d4 Tal is establishing this classical pawn center, knight e7, bishop b3, h6 and knight h4. Tal is opening up the queen's diagonal and the threat is queen f3. So far so good, but in here Letelier made a terrible mistake and played g5. I guess he just got entangled in his own analysis. He should have first played knight a5 and only go for g5, but in our game we have g5 straight away. Instead of playing g5, the best continuations are e takes d4 or knight a5. Knight a5 is a move which Paul Keres played against Mikhail Tal 10 years later in 1973. But in this game we have g5 and there it goes, queen h5. Tal is creating a direct mating threat. If you accept the sacrifice, then I will checkmate you with a bishop. I'm not sure what about you, but I prefer to checkmate black king with a bishop. That's why black played rook h7, neutralized the mating threat, but here Tal simply won the pawn on g5. This is move 10 and already we can say that black's position is catastrophic. E takes d4 was played, f4. Tal is taking under control the c5 square, not allowing any possible knight e5, bishop g4 threats. Queen c8, but still black is creating that nasty threat which can allow black to trap white queen. That's why Tal neutralized that light squared bishop as well, this time by playing f5, d takes c3, knight takes c3, knight e5 and bishop f6. Yes, Tal allows black to announce that check, but that won't give black anything. If knight g8 then bishop g5, still white has a very dangerous attack. In our game after bishop f6 we have knight g8 and simply bishop takes e5. Tal is removing that active knight from e5 square, after which we have knight g6, a devastating move. The knight is coming after the pawn on e5. Of course, capturing on g6 can't be played because of this queen g6 check, and yes, black's position is hopeless. That's why black played bishop d6, protected the pawn on e5, but in here Tal made another fascinating move. Can you find his next move? Ready? This time he went for bishop takes f7 check. Look at this, guys. Now if rook takes f7, then knight h8 can finish up black. This queen is just out of the game and can't support his pieces. That's why after bishop takes f7, black accepted the bishop sacrifice and won it with the king and knight d5 by Tal. Of course, instead of playing knight d5, Tal could also remove this central pawn and then castle kingside, but in our game after king takes f7 he played knight d5, king g7, and we have castling kingside. But of course I have to tell you once again that definitely first removing the central e5 pawn and then castling could give white better chances. But anyways, we have what we have. Knight f6 by Letelier. We have the exchange of knights on f6 and another powerful blow by Mikhail Tal. Knight takes e5. Yes, this is a move which allows white to proceed with the attack. With this sacrifice, Tal is freeing the g6 square for the queen. Now if bishop takes e5, then queen g6 is coming, and if a move like king takes e5, then f6. This king can become an easy target for white pieces, and you can't even move it back because of this checkmate. That's why after knight takes e5, black played queen e8, and now comes knight takes d7 check. Rook takes d7, black is still keeping the queen on this h5 e8 diagonal, not allowing queen g6 check, but this time we have e5 check. White wants to open up the position and target this miserable king. Bishop takes e5, queen h6 check, king f7, rook e1. New forces are joining the attack, and this exposed black king simply has no chance to survive. Rook d5, queen h7 check, king f6, rook e4. Tal wants to switch his rook into the attack from the 4th rank. And at the same time, this is a powerful move with which Tal is sacrificing the rook. Bishop d4 check was played, king h1, and in here, believe it or not, but black resigned. Black decided not to accept the rook sacrifice and resigned, but let's take a look what if queen takes e4. Then in this case, queen g6 check is coming. If king e7, then f6 check, and black is losing his queen, or if king e5, then queen e6 checkmate. Truly a spectacular checkmate, right guys? This black king surrounded by his own pieces is getting killed. Another very aggressive game by Mikhail Tal. Yes, as you have noticed, white played the opening terribly, that g5 was a terrible mistake, but once again, the way Mikhail Tal managed to make use of his opponent's mistakes was simply astounding. In the end, a chess puzzle for you. Please take a look at this position and try to find the mating line for white. I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. Consider checking them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, Soren here, and in this video I would like to share with you a brilliant chess miniature played at 2019 Grand Chess Tour. With the white pieces playing Sergei Karyakin and his opponent is Vasily Topalov. The game was played in round 19 and this was a blitz game. Karyakin opened up with e4 and Topalov responded with e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, we have the Ruy Lopez, and knight f6, black is choosing the Berlin defense. Here Karyakin castled kingside, and after knight takes e4 played rook e1. This is the most popular alternative to d4. In our game we have rook e1, knight d6, bishop f1, bishop e7, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, rook takes e5, Topalov castled kingside. Of course, all this is a theory seen many times. d4, bishop f6, and it was in here that Sergei Karyakin delivered a surprise. In here, usually white is moving back his rook either on e1 or on e2, but after bishop f6, instead of touching his rook, Karyakin played bishop d3. He's bringing his bishop on this attacking diagonal and is going for an exchange sacrifice. What is interesting, this is a very rare continuation, and in my chess-based database there were only 3 games with this line. Topalov accepted the rook sacrifice and captured on e5. He takes e5, knight d8, knight c3, d6, and we have queen h5 with a direct mating thread. g6 is forced, queen h6, and a mistake by Topalov, d takes e5. This is what Karyakin was definitely hoping for. Instead of playing d takes e5, it was better to play queen e7. And now if bishop g5, then black can capture on e5 with the queen. If bishop f4, then queen e6. But in our game after queen h6, Topalov played d takes e5. He failed to find the best continuation over the board, and now he will face serious problems. Here comes bishop g5 and queen d7. I have to tell you that this position was also seen in 2016 in a game played between Robert Hovhannisyan and young Christian Schroeder. In here Schroeder proceeded with queen d4 and again quickly lost the game. Hovhannisyan played bishop e7, created a direct mating thread, and after knight g7 played knight e4, and black resigned. Yes, black's position is totally hopeless. Let's go back, but in our game after bishop g5, Topalov played queen d7, but anyways, this knight e4 is on the board, the threat is knight f6 check. Topalov played f6, but this time he weakened the a2 g8 diagonal, and there it goes, bishop c4 check is on the board. Rook f7, and after knight takes f6, this is move 18, but Topalov resigned. Black's position is totally hopeless. If knight takes f6, then bishop takes f6, and how are you going to neutralize this mating thread? A very dramatic game. I think it turns out that typical tricks can even work at such a high level. Nice surprising weapon by Sergei Karyakin. In the end, a chess puzzle for you, where again white is going to exploit the weaknesses of the dark squares. It's white to move and win the game. I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. Consider checking them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, Soren here, and in this video I want to share with you another fascinating attacking game played by Rashid Neshmetdinov. His opponent is Georgian chess player Bukhuti Gurgenidze, and the game was played in 1957 in Moscow at USSR Championship. Let's see what happened on the board. Gurgenidze opened up with e4 and Neshmetdinov responded with e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, we have the Ruy Lopez a6, Morphy defense, bishop a4, knight f6, and queen e2. White goes for Warmalt attack, although I have to tell you that some sources define Warmalt as occurring after castling bishop e7 and then queen e2, but in our game we have queen e2 straight away. And actually I have to tell you that the major plus point about playing queen e2 is the surprise value. In some lines white can delay castling kingside and bring the queenside knight on g3, or another alternative is castling kingside straight away and then bringing the rook on d1, which we will see in this game. From time to time this line can even be seen at the highest level even nowadays. Let's go on. Here Neshmetdinov responded with b5, bishop b3, bishop c5, c3, d6, and we have castling by both sides, and there it goes, rook d1 is on the board. The rook is coming to support the advance of the d-pawn, queen e7, h3, bishop b6, and d4 is on the board, bishop b7. Neshmetdinov is developing his last piece and is connecting his rooks, and in return white is closing the center by playing d5, knight a5, bishop c2, c6, d takes c6, knight takes c6, and bishop g5. Another interesting alternative is emphasizing the vulnerability of this d6 pawn and playing a4, and if b4 then white can play knight d2 with the idea of bringing the knight on c4, but in our game we have bishop g5, now comes h6, and we have the exchange on f6, knight d2, knight e7, knight f1, knight g6, the black knight is eyeballing on this f4 square, white played g3, queen e6, and a strange move by Gurgenidze, knight e3. He's allowing black to win this pawn on h3, but this is creating problems for white. Instead it was better to play king g2. If bishop c8, then knight g1. The h3 square is covered successfully, but in our game after queen e6 we have knight e3, and after queen takes h3, though in return white won the pawn on d6, but by winning the pawn on h3, black managed to place his queen on an active attacking squares, and now white can face serious problems. Bishop c5, the bishop on b6 was hanging, and another strange move by Gurgenidze, rook takes g6. Gurgenidze goes for an exchange sacrifice. He's removing the defender and wants to win this central pawn, but he's misevaluating the consequences. Instead it was better to move back the rook on d2 square. The rook both can be useful on the second rank, and also white can maintain the possibility of doubling up his rooks on the d file. Though I have to tell you that after f5 still black has a nice attack. This is a powerful move and you can't even touch this pawn because of this brilliant exchange sacrifice, and then knight h4 is coming and black is winning. Let's go on, but in our game after bishop c5 we have this dubious rook takes g6 move. Yes guys, I know you have missed dubious moves and we have it. F takes g6, knight takes e5 and king h7, rook d1, which steps into another devastating move. As we have reached the critical position, please pause the video and try to find the winning move played by Rashid Nejmetdinov. Ready? In here, Super Nesh played... Oops, sorry. Let's start once again. In here, Super Nesh went for rook takes f2. Look at this heavy blow, guys. This is a move which is breaking into pieces white's king side. This reminds me of Mikhail Tal's rook takes f7 sacrifice in a game played against William Harstone, which I published just yesterday, and in case you missed that game, I will pin the link in the comment section. White accepted the rook sacrifice and captured on f2, but let's take a look at queen takes f2 as well. Then in this case the rook is coming, and actually there are two major weaknesses in white's camp. How are you going to cover all these squares? If you move back your queen on e1, then in this case you can step into this devastating deflective move, and then bishop takes e3 is coming and black is winning. Let's go back. That's why we have king takes f2 and queen h2 check. King e1, queen takes g3 check, king d2, and after queen takes e5, knight d5, queen g5 check. Gurgenidze resigned. Yes guys, he resigned because his position is totally lost, though there are no direct mating threats. Here is one of the possible lines. If knight e3, then this time rook d8 check is coming, and then queen g1, and then rook f8. White's position is hopeless, guys. There are so many threats. That's why after queen g5 check we have a resignation. Another instructive attack by Nejmetdinov, though let's admit that in the end Gurgenidze played simply terribly. In the end, as usual, let's solve a chess puzzle. Please take a look at this position and try to find the mating line for black. I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Let's see who can find the most beautiful mating line. Well, thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you, and keep up with my channel because in one of my next videos I will also cover more games played by Nejmetdinov. I should definitely cover Nejmetdinov's game against Mikhail Tal and also the game against Genrikh Kasparyan as well. See you soon. Hello chess lovers, let's have a look at a game played by Paul Keres against Alexander Alekhin. The game was played in 1937. Keres started with e4 and e5 by Alekhin, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, white goes for the Spanish game a6 Morphy defense, bishop a4, d6. Usually in this position white is castling kingside or playing d4, c3, but we see a rare continuation c4, bishop d7, knight c3, g6, black is going to fianchetto the bishop and d4, bishop g7, bishop e3, knight f6, we see d takes e5, d takes e5 and bishop c5, a strong move, controlling a3, f8 diagonal and not allowing black to castle kingside. Actually this move creates a lot of problems for black. Knight h5, knight d5. I really like Keres' position. Knight f4, we see the exchange of knights and e5, closing the bishop's diagonal and getting a very dominating pawn on e5 square. g5, now comes the queen, queen d5. From the opening, Keres managed to get a very strong position. Bishop f8, finally Alekhin decides to get rid of this dominating bishop on c5 square, and white castles queenside. Queen e7, Black is also preparing castling queenside, but now we see bishop takes c6, bishop takes c6, queen d3, and again bishop d7, blocking the d file and preparing cancelling queenside. And now using the vulnerability of this bishop on d7, Keres captures on g5. Alokhin castled queenside, knight f3 and f6. Well, if we have a look at the board, Alokhin managed to convert that terrible position into an equal game, but in this position he made a mistake and played f6. Well, it was better to play bishop e6, and if queen takes h7, then in return black can capture on c4. But instead, after knight f3, we see f6, which is creating too many weaknesses in black's camp. We see e takes f6, rook takes f6, rook e1, and overlooking white's next threat, Alokhin played queen b4. Well, at least he should have played queen f8, but instead we see queen b4. Now you will understand the difference. In this position, Paul Keres made a move and Alokhin resigned. Can you find the winning move? Ready? Actually, that's very simple. I'm sure that a real chess lover must spot such a tactical shot just in a blink of an eye. Keres played queen takes d7 check and Alokhin resigned. I just can't understand such a tactical monster like Alokhin. How could he blunder this move? Now if rook takes d7, then rook e8 check, and then with which rook are we going to take? I prefer with the rook on d1, and this is a checkmate. That's why after queen takes d7 check, Alokhin resigned. It will be also very interesting to know your opinion about this game. Waiting for your comments and questions. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, Suren here, and in this video I want to share with you an interesting game played by the 8th world chess champion Mikhail Tal. His opponent is Soviet chess master Alexander Cherepkov, and the game was played at 1968-69 USSR Championship. But before starting our game, consider subscribing in order not to miss my future uploads. This game was played in Almaty, which is a city in Kazakhstan, and Mikhail Tal, who was playing with the white pieces, opened up with e4. Cherepkov responded with e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. We have the Ruy Lopez, a6, Morphy defense, bishop a4, knight f6, white castles kingside, bishop e7. Black is choosing the closed variations, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, black castles kingside, c3, d6, h3. I have to tell you that these are positions which have been seen thousands of times, and we are probably in the most popular line of the Spanish game. c5, d4, queen c7, knight d2, knight c6. Another popular alternative is c takes d4. c takes d4 is actually more popular, but in our game we have knight c6. a3, well, instead of playing a3, d5 is better, and then a4. This gives white better chances, but after knight c6 we have a3, knight d7, which looks a bit strange. Instead of playing knight d7 in here, the best move is considered to be bishop d7, but in our game we have knight d7. And the problem with this knight d7 is that now by playing d5 and then b4, white could gain pretty nice position and a space advantage. I really don't like how black pieces are placed, but in our game after knight d7, Tal chose d takes e5, which is a less ambitious try. D takes e5 by Cherepkov, a4, knight b6, a takes b5, a takes b5, after which the players exchanged their rooks. Knight f1, knight b6, knight e3, bishop e6. At this point I have to tell you that the players have equal chances. Maybe white has a slight advantage due to the fact that can put his knight on this active square, but all in all the players have equal chances. But it was in here that Cherepkov made a mistake and captured on d5, after which white is managing to gain advantage. Instead it was better to move away the queen, for example, on b7 square. But in our game after knight d5, we have knight takes d5. It takes d5 by tal. Now we have a very nice double attack. That's why black is forced to pin the pawn, and a move which probably Cherepkov missed when going for this line is bishop takes h7, which Mikhail Tal made. Now the idea of bishop takes h7 is that now if king takes h7, then queen c2 check is coming and white is unpinning the pawn. If king g8, then after d takes e6, f takes e6, white can play queen g6, and with this shattered pawn islands, black is facing serious problems. Or after queen c2 check, if move like f5, then see this time white can capture on e6, and then can play knight g5 and then queen b3, both protecting this pawn, attacking the pawn on b5, and again white is managing to gain advantage. While you are busy with winning the pawn on e6, white will win the pawn on b5, and white is enjoying a pretty nice advantage. But in our game after bishop takes h7 check, Cherepkov chose king f8. Here we have bishop e4, queen d6, black is intensifying the pressure on d5, and queen c2. This is your pawn, you can grab it. I've already munched the pawn on h7 and can penetrate your camp, right? Queen h7 is on the board with a direct mating threat. Bishop f6, knight g5. Tal is choosing a more active square for his knight. Knight e7, knight e4, knight g8, bishop e3. We have another target, bishop e7. All the time Tal is managing to create problems for his opponent. And what I like very much in Tal's style, that all the time he finds the most active squares for his pieces. This time we have knight g3. At any moment the knight can jump on f5 square. Rook d6, after which black's position goes down very quickly. Well, by going for e4, black could demonstrate a tougher resistance, but even in this case, white has a huge advantage. Let's go back. In our game after knight g3, we have rook d6 and knight f5 with a double attack. You can neutralize both threats only by playing rook g6, but when going for this line, Cherepkov overlooked another powerful winning move by Tal. As we have reached the critical position, please pause the video and try to find Mikhail Tal's next move. Ready? Well, I'm sure that in a blink of a second you found that move, and that move is queen takes g8. Truly a brilliant move, right? In here we have a resignation. In view of if king takes g8, then knight takes e7 is coming, and black is suffering heavy losses. In the end of the day, white has 2 extra pieces. That was actually very surprising that Cherepkov missed queen takes g8. Looks like that in complex position, when facing tactical motives, he was really very weak. What other players missed Tal sees, but I have to tell you that typical moves can be easily overlooked even by strong players. For example, let's take a look at this position, which is taken from a game played between Alexander Alekhin and Max Euwe. This game was played at their 1937 World Championship rematch. This game was played in round 16, and in here, Euwe, who was playing with the black pieces, played queen e5, and what is interesting, Alekhin missed the winning move. Queen h8 could allow him to gain a huge advantage. It's surprising, right, that such a strong tactician missed queen h8 move. With this move, white is managing to win a pawn and is getting nice chances of winning in the endgame. With an extra pawn, this should be converted into a victory. Well, in the end, let's also solve a chess puzzle. Please take a look at this position and try to find the winning move for white. This position is taken from a game played between Mikhail Tal and Bruno Parma, and this is a thematic puzzle again. You have to find a forking motif. I have already given you too many hints, and I'm sure that you found the winning move in a blink of a second. I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Well, thanks for watching. In the end, here are more suggestions for you. Feel free to check them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, Soren here, and in this video I would like to share with you a very interesting and double-edged game which was played between Robert James Fischer and Sidney Norman Bernstein. The game was played in 1959 in New York at USA Championship. At the time of this game, Fischer was only 16 years old. He was the youngest participant of the event, but already this was his third consecutive appearance at US Chess Championship. When it comes to Sidney Bernstein, he was an American chess master who participated in 8 US Chess Championships. But before starting our game, make sure that you are subscribed in order not to miss my future uploads. In this game, Fischer is playing with white pieces and he opened up with e4. Bernstein responded with e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. We have the Ruy Lopez a6, Morphy defense, bishop a4, knight f6, white castles kingside, bishop e7, black is going for closed variations, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, and black also castles kingside. Here we have c3, to which Bernstein responded with a very aggressive martial attack d5. This is a sharp line where black is gambiting a pawn, and this requires a huge theoretical knowledge. Usually players are avoiding this line and are setting up anti-martial systems, but Fischer cold-heartedly played c3 and allowed d5 move. Let's see what's going to happen in this hyper-aggressive line. He takes d5 by Fischer, and instead of knight takes d5, which is the main continuation, Bernstein played a very rare e4 move. I guess that this was a well-analyzed home preparation, and he wanted to surprise his young opponent. Fischer captured on c6, and in return Bernstein captured on f3. Queen takes f3, and if we have a look at the position, this is move 11, and already white is 2 pawns up, but in return, by making bishop g4 move, black is already completing his development, while still white needs to solve the development of his queenside pieces. Fischer played queen g3, and this time Bernstein activated his dark squared bishop with the tempo by putting it on d6. Queen h4. Well, later against Herbert Seidman, Fischer would choose f4 move. But in our game we have queen h4. By the way, that game is also very interesting and probably we should cover it as well. In this game we have queen h4, rook e8, f3. Fischer is both attacking the light squared bishop and is protecting his rook. Bishop f5, d4. Finally, white is opening up his dark squared bishop's diagonal in order to try to complete his queenside development, but in here Bernstein made a very interesting and aggressive bishop takes h2 sacrifice. Bernstein is considered to be a speculative player, and martial attack and typical moves are in his nature. But let's see where's black's compensation. So Fischer accepted the bishop sacrifice by playing king takes h2 and knight g4 check, and already king g3 is forced in order to protect the queen. King g3 by Fischer, queen takes h4 check, king takes h4, rook takes e1, f takes g4, rook takes c1, and g takes f5. Now let's take a look at the position. Against the rook, white has 2 pieces, a pawn, but still activating this rook on a1 is very problematic. The computer is evaluating the position as equal. Here Bernstein played rook d8 and a4 by Fischer. He's trying to create a counterplay on the queen side. b4, d5, and rook b8. So far so good. Black's moves were accurate, but this rook b8 is a mistake. Instead it was better to capture on c3 and then play a5, neutralizing any possible advancement and counterplay on the queen side. But in our game after d5 we have rook b8, which is allowing Fischer to gain advantage. Making use of the fact that the rook left the d file, here Fischer played d6. C takes d6. By going for a pawn sacrifice, he managed to get a passed pawn, and this time he played bishop c4. Bernstein played rook c8, decided to give up this pawn on a6 in the cost of winning the pawn on c6, but once white manages to get a passed pawn on a file, black is facing huge issues. Here Bernstein played rook b6, but this is already losing. Instead, it was better to play b takes c3. Now if bishop takes c6, then c2, and if knight a3, then rook takes a1, and in this case black can hope for a draw, though still that's going to be a very tough defense. But instead, after bishop b5 we have rook b6, to which Fischer responded with c4. First overprotected his bishop, and now this a pawn will march forward. d5 and a5. g5 check. Understanding that his position is hopeless, Bernstein is starting to rely on cheap tricks, like now if f takes g6, then black can play rook takes g6 and can create mating threats. In this case, black is managing to gain advantage, but of course Fischer didn't go for that move. Instead, he captured on g5 with his king. h6 check, king g4, rook b8, and this time we have a6, and this a pawn is becoming really very problematic for black. He takes c4, a7, rook a8, and bishop c6. Black is in trouble, and victory is just a matter of moves. h5 check, king g5 by Fischer. Of course, he could even win the pawn on h5, but he's not even allowing his opponent to announce some checks. Rook takes b1 by Bernstein. By giving away his rook, he is managing to win the pawn on a7, but just no way out. Here comes rook c1, and now black will suffer more losses. In here, rook a2 was played, and rook takes c4, rook takes b2, f6, and finally in here on move 38 we have a resignation, because actually black king is in a mating net. This bishop e4 is coming and just no way out. That's why finally in here Bernstein resigned. Well, this was a very interesting and double-edged game by both sides. The first path Bernstein played nicely, but then in the end game he started to make inaccuracies one after another, and Fischer demonstrated high endgame skills by beating his opponent in a complex battle which arose on the queen side. Well, in the end, let's also solve a chess puzzle where the task is to find the winning move for black. It's black to move, and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. Feel free to check them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, Suren here, and in this video I would like to share with you a brutal attacking game played by legendary German chess master Siegbert Tarrasch. Tarrasch is playing with black pieces, and the name of his opponent is unknown. This game was played in 1932 in Munich. But before starting our game, make sure that you are subscribed in order not to miss my future uploads. And now let's get started with this fascinating game and see what happened on the board. White opened up with e4, and Tarrasch was playing with the black pieces, responded with e5. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, we have Ruy Lopez, a6, Morphy defense, bishop a4, knight f6, white castles, kingside. In here black has a wide range of options. Black can either play bishop e7 or b5, or knight takes e4, but in our game we have bishop c5. Here, using the vulnerability of this bishop, white captured on e4 with the idea of if knight takes e5, then d4. And this line is actually very popular and can be seen at the highest level. Black in here is capturing on e4. But in our game, after knight takes e5, Tarash went for knight takes e4 straight away, which is a very rare continuation. This actually allows white to gain advantage by relying on the vulnerability of the e file. Here comes knight takes c6, d takes c6, and queen f3. Not the best square for white queen. Instead, it was better to put the queen on e2. Attack the knight. If queen e7, then rook e1. But in our game after d takes c6, we have queen f3, to which Tarash responded with a very active queen jump, queen h4. He's putting his queen on an attacking square, is protecting the knight, and at the same time is intensifying the pressure on f2. Right now, 3 black pieces are eyeballing on f2 square. White played knight c3 and knight takes c3, which is a mistake. Well, instead it was better to move back the knight on g5 and attack white queen. But instead we have knight takes c3, and the problem with this move is that this steps into a brutal bishop takes c6 check, which white made. B takes c6, queen takes c6 check, bishop d7, and queen takes a8 check. Well, white is munching black rook, but it was too early to make that move. Instead, it was better first to announce a check from e1 and only then capture on a8. And then play a move like d4 and neutralize the threat. In this case, white has a winning position, but in our game after bishop d7, we have queen takes a8 check straight away, king e7, and queen takes h8. White is accepting the second rook sacrifice, but this is already losing. Well, after king e7, it was not too late to think about a defense. Moves like queen f3 or rook e1 check could allow white to fight back. White is doing okay, the players have equal chances, and if bishop e6, then queen f3, neutralizing queen takes f2 threat. But in our game after king e7, we have queen takes h8 check, and as I've already mentioned, already at this point, white's position is totally losing. Here comes knight e2 check, and after king h1, Tarash captured on f2. And he created a direct mating threat. Right now the threat is knight g3 checkmate. White played h3, opened up a loop for his king, but this time he stepped into queen takes h3 check. I know, guys, you saw this move in a blink of a second, that's why I decided even not to ask you to find this killing move. With this move, black is simply blowing apart white's king side, and the game is over, guys. After g takes h3, this time the light squared bishop joined the attack, and after king h2, we have a brutal bishop g3 checkmate. What a beautiful and picturesque checkmate, right? 3 minor pieces are killing the enemy king. This is move 17 and we have a checkmate. And in just 17 moves, Siegbert Tarash sacrificed 2 rooks and a queen. Of course, the first rook sacrifice was inaccurate, but white's defense was poor and he quickly fell victim to black's aggression. Well, in the end, let's also solve a chess puzzle where the task is to find the mating line for white. It's white to move, and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. Feel free to check them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Hello chess lovers, Student here, and in this video want to throw a quick look at Super Blitz game played between the reigning world chess champion Magnus Carlsen and Belarusian chess grandmaster Ivan Cheparinov. This game was played during Chess24 Banter Blitz Cup. So this was a Super Blitz game. The players had 3 minutes on the clock, and Carlsen, who was playing with the white pieces, opened up with e4, to which Cheparinov responded with e5. Knight f3, knight c6, and we have the good old Ruy Lopez. Bishop b5, a6, black is choosing the Morphy defense, bishop a4, and g6, black is choosing the Fianchetto defense. Though I have to tell you that black can go for Fianchetto defense straight away. Instead of playing a6, black can go for g6 straight away. But in our game we first see a6, and only then black went for g6. Black is preparing to Fianchetto his kingside bishop, and in return we have c3, Carlsen is preparing to establish this classical pawn center, thus neutralizing black's dark squared bishop. Bishop g7, d4, e takes d4, c takes d4, b5, bishop c2. Later this bishop is going to be very useful on this diagonal. d5, well, not the best continuation. In here d6 is considered to be the best move, and this is a move which Shahryar Mamediyarov made in a game against Fabiano Caruana in 2018. But instead in our game we have d5 and Carlsen captured on d5. Right now queen takes d5 is not really good because this can allow white to develop his queenside knight with a tempo. In here white can first go for castling kingside and then play knight c3. That's why black played knight e7, then Carlsen castled kingside. Still, hurrying and winning the pawn is not really good because after rook e1 check, white can create some problems for black. Black should develop his kingside knight by putting on e7, and in some cases, yeah, this can step into a pin. White can play bishop g5, or first knight c3 and then bishop g5. That's why after castling kingside, we see a safer continuation by black. Knight f6, rook e1, black castled kingside, and only after bishop g5, black captured on d5. Knight c3 and h6. So far so good, despite the fact that white has a slightly preferable position. Black was holding, no problem at all. But with this h6, black is making a terrible mistake, after which his position will go down very quickly. Instead of breaking up the pin with h6, it was better to break it up by playing queen d6. And now if knight takes d5, then knight takes d5. But in our game after knight c3, we have h6, and there we have it, knight takes d5. And the thing is that now it turns out that you can't play queen takes d5 because after bishop takes f6, white has this bishop e4 and black is losing. That's why after knight takes d5, black played h takes g5, but here Carlsen delivered at Sviašanchuk knight e7 check. In here Carlsen said, turned out pretty quickly, didn't really even have time to be worried. And after king h8, Carlsen won the pawn on g5. Black king looks vulnerable and these knights are a huge threat for it. Yeah, it's over, you know, bishop g4, queen d3, bishop h6, h4. In here Carlsen was considering moves like knight takes f7 or knight takes g6, and I have to tell you that both work. But the thing is that from afar this may seem a bit dangerous. You have to calculate deeply, and that's not something which is easy to do during a super blitz game. And I have bishop h5, then bishop d1, a deflective move with which white wants to exploit the weaknesses of the light squares. But instead in our game after bishop h6 we have h4, a solid continuation with which white is still maintaining winning chances. Yeah, white's position is winning, queen d6, and finally we have knight takes g6. I have to tell you that in here knight takes f7 also works, but Carlsen proceeded with knight takes g6, f takes g6, and queen takes g6. The game is over, you know, the game is over. Right now the bishop is hanging. We have bishop g7 and rook e5. White not only wants to double up his rooks on the e file and penetrate the 7th rank, but also this rook is very useful to have on the 5th rank. There is also knight f7 threat. For example, now if you neutralize white's attack by playing bishop h5, then white has this knight f7 check, and then white is winning the bishop and thus the game as well. Now if knight takes h5, then white can announce a checkmate. That's why black should play king h8. But in here white has bishop b3 move, exploiting the weakness of a to g8 diagonal. Yeah, all white pieces are on the most accurate squares and are managing to join the attack just in time. And now if knight takes h5, then queen takes f7, and then queen takes h5. If queen h6, then queen g4, and with so many extra pawns, white can easily win the game. Also taking into consideration the fact that black king is exposed, black has no chance to survive. But in our game after rook e5, instead of choosing bishop h5, which could prolong black's resistance, black played queen d4, which is even worse. This allows white to force mate in 8 moves. Rook e7 with a direct mating threat. Black played rook g8 but got checkmated after knight f7. But after making knight f7, Carlsen said I should have gone for queen h7 check, followed by knight f7 checkmate. Yeah, this would have been great, but as you know, Magnus Carlsen is an engine. He's playing with the engine's precision and instead chose the shortest path by announcing checkmate in one. Nice game by the reigning world chess champion. One wrong step and you are done, you know. That h6 turned out to be a total blunder, after which Black's position collapsed quickly. Yeah, just wondering guys, how can one beat a grandmaster in such a quick and easy way? In the end, a thematic chess puzzle which is taken from a game played between Paul Morphy and Schrufer, where the task is to find the mating line for white. It's white to move and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. Feel free to check them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, Soren here, and in this video I want to share with you a brilliant attacking game played by Emil Kramer. Kramer is on the black side and his opponent is Alexander Nitsifor. The game was played in 1921 in Celje, which is a town in Slovenia. But before starting our video, consider subscribing to my channel and also press that bell button in order to get notified about new uploads. And now, without further ado, let's get started with our game and see what happened on the board. Nitsifor opened up with e4 and Kramer responded with e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. We have the Ruy Lopez knight f6, black is choosing the Berlin defense, and knight c3. White is transforming the game into 4 knights game Spanish variation. In here, of course, black can go for bishop b4, choose the symmetrical variation, or play bishop d6 or knight d4. In our game we have bishop c5. Here white captured on e5 with the idea of if knight takes e5 then d4, winning back the piece, but after knight takes e5, black played knight d4, bishop e2, which looks somewhat dubious. Well, there was no need to move that bishop. Instead, white could simply castle kingside, or moving back the bishop on c4 is even better. This c4 is a more active square for the bishop, but in our game we have bishop e2. Here black castled kingside, d3, d5, bishop g5, rook e8. Black is attacking white knight. Knight goes back on f3, after which Emil Kramer landed a heavy punch and he went for a very interesting knight takes e4 move. With this move he's going for a queen sacrifice, but accepting the queen sacrifice can be very dangerous because after knight takes f3 check, now if you play g takes f3 then your king can even get checkmated, or after knight takes f3 check, if you play bishop takes f3 then black can announce a discover check, and then yes, once white is losing his queen, this is going to be winning for black. Black has an extra piece. Let's go back in our game. After knight takes e4, white played knight takes e4, which is a mistake. In here it was better to play d takes e4. If knight takes f3 check, then bishop takes f3, and if queen takes g5, then queen takes d5. If queen e7, then white can castle kingside. White has an extra pawn, but the engine is evaluating the position as equal. The bishop pair compensates the absence of a pawn. Let's go back, but in our game after knight takes e4 we have knight takes e4, which is a mistake. Here we have d takes e4. Still black is insisting on sacrificing his queen, and at this point already, yes, white should go for it, otherwise white can suffer heavy losses, and Alexander Nitsifor accepted the queen sacrifice, and we have e takes f3. And now the vulnerability of this e-file is going to play an essential role. Here g takes f3 can be met with knight takes f3 check, and a similar checkmate we have already seen in one of our lines. That's why after e takes f3 White moved back his bishop on h4. By the way, I have to tell you that Kessling also won't allow to solve his problems because of this f takes e2 move, and again Black's position is totally winning. Let's go back. In our game we have bishop h4 and f takes g2. Suddenly this pawn became very dangerous, right? Right now Black is not only attacking the rook but also is threatening knight f3 checkmate. For example, if rook g1, then knight f3 checkmate can follow. That's why White decided to move away his king from this dangerous e-file, but did it in the cost of losing his rook as well. We have g takes h1 queen, queen takes h1 and rook takes e2. This is a total destruction, guys. You can't even play a move like king c3 because of this. Rook takes c2 checkmate, right? After rook takes e2, if we have a look at the board, Black has a rook, two minor pieces against the queen, and Black's position is actually totally winning because White king is in danger. King d1 was played. Meanwhile, we have bishop g4. Black is developing his bishop and is putting it on an aggressive attacking square. And though this allows White to play queen takes b7, but of course there is nothing wrong. That's just a pawn. Rook takes c2, discover check. King e1, rook e8 check. And there it goes. Black is starting to harass White king. King g1, knight e2 check, king h1, knight c1. The knight is blocking the first rank and the threat is rook e1 checkmate f4. White is opening up the bishop's diagonal in order to control that square, but now comes rook e2. What's going on, guys? Just no way to stop Black pieces. Queen b8 check, bishop f8, bishop g3. White is covering the h2 square, but now comes rook d2, this time with the threat of rook d1 check. Queen takes a7, a desperate attempt. White could already resign long time ago, but decided to play up to the checkmate, and we have it, guys. Bishop g2 checkmate. What a brutal, I would rather call this a sadistic checkmate. Look at this, guys. First Black went for a queen sacrifice on move 9 and then unleash an unstoppable attack. What a game. Well, in the end, let's also solve a chess puzzle. The task is actually very easy. You have to find the winning move for Black. It's Black to move, and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. In the end, here are more suggestions for you. Feel free to check them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, Soren here, and in this video I want to share with you the second play of Blitz game played at 2019 Sinquefield Cup between the reigning world chess champion Magnus Carlsen and Chinese chess grandmaster Ding Liren. The previous two rapid games ended in a draw. The first Blitz game Magnus Carlsen lost in a very dramatic battle. Probably we should also take a look at that game as well, but in this game I want to share with you the second Blitz game where Carlsen was down 1 point, and this was a must-win game for him, and it was expected that he would play va-bank. In this game, Carlsen was playing with the white pieces, and he opened up with e4. Ding Liren responded with e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop b5. We have the Ruy Lopez a6. Ding Liren is choosing the Morphy defense, bishop a4, knight f6, white castles kingside, bishop e7. In here the most popular move is rook e1, but in our game we have d3, b5 by Ding Liren. These closed variations are very well analyzed, but we will see that very quickly the players would deviate from the main lines. Knight a5 by Ding Liren, bishop c2, c5, d4, c takes d4, c takes d4, black castles kingside, h3, rook e8, d5. Carlsen is locking up the center. Bishop d7, knight c3, queen b8, bishop d3, Rook c8, we have an equal game, nothing special. Knight e2, both players are maneuvering, looking for better squares for their pieces, and g4, yes, a very aggressive approach by Carlsen. This is somewhat weakening his king side, and later this will play a very important role in the game, but meanwhile he plays va-bank and chooses this risky g4 move, knight c5, knight g3. Well, this is a somewhat strange decision because Carlsen is allowing black to win his light-squared bishop. Right now the center is closed, Carlsen is giving it up, but later black will start successfully make use of the weaknesses of the white squares. b4 is on the board with bishop b5 threat, and once this white light squared bishop is absent, black bishop will now get very active. Queen b5, as Dingleren was leading in score, he's offering the exchange of queens, but of course Carlsen is rejecting. We have queen d1, rook c7. Dingleren is preparing to double up his rooks on the c file, and I really like his position. You know, knight d2, g6 by Dingleren, though a move like queen d3 followed by bishop b5 looks more active, but in our game we have g6, b3. Carlsen wants to put his knight on c4, queen b7, knight c4. Meanwhile, the bishop is coming on f1, a6 diagonal, knight a5, queen b8, queen d2, rook c3. At this point already it's not quite clear how can white proceed with the game. That's why Carlsen is choosing a3, trying to create some counterplay. B takes a3 and knight c6. Well, all the time Carlsen is trying to make the position complex. Now in here Dingleren spent 45 seconds, and this was actually a crucial moment. He was trying to figure out how is he going to capture on c6. At this point he should decide to give up the exchange. He can capture either with both rooks or with a bishop, and he chose bishop takes c6, queen takes c3, bishop takes d5. And now, against the rook, black is getting a piece and a bishop and 2 pawns. Queen a5, bishop takes e4. Black managed to open up the long diagonal, and now he will successfully exploit the weakness of the diagonal. g5 by Carlsen. He wants to kick away the defender and win a piece, and at this point it looks like that white is managing to gain advantage, but Carlsen overlooked a powerful move by Dingleren, and that move is bishop a8. With this move, Dingleren wants to support his queen from behind with a bishop. Now if you win the knight, then queen b7 is coming, and black is threatening checkmate in one. A brilliant idea, right? If king f1, then bishop d8 can be played, and then black can start giving a perpetual check. And this is what Dingleren wanted. By the way, you can't play a move like queen d2 because of this queen d5 check, and once the rook is also joining the attack, you can get checkmated. That's why all you can do is to move his king from f1 to e2 and repeat the moves. But after bishop a8, Carlsen chose queen takes a6. With this move he's avoiding a perpetual check. Knight d5 by Dingleren, bishop a7, queen c7, rook c1, and queen takes c1. Dingleren is exchanging his queen with 2 rooks, though bishop c6 is also playable, but he goes for queen takes c1, rook takes c1, rook takes c1 check, king h2, bishop c6, queen takes a3, bishop takes g5, queen takes d6. Well, this is already a mistake, after which white's position goes down quickly. Knight e2 could have been better in order not to allow any bishop f4 moves. If rook e1, then queen takes d6. But in our game we have queen takes d6 straight away, to which Dingleren responded with bishop f4, pinned the knight, and to Carlsen's bishop c5 move, with which Carlsen is threatening checkmate in one. Dingleren responded with an absolutely staggering knight e7. He's covering the diagonal and at the same time is opening up the light squared bishop's diagonal with a mating thread. Just no defense for white. All white can do is to give away his queen. That's why, understanding that his position is hopeless, Magnus Carlsen resigned and Dingleren won the 2019 Sinquefield Cup. Carlsen gave Ding 2 handshakes, one for the game and after standing up, one more for the tournament. What is interesting, I have to tell you that Carlsen hadn't lost a single playoff since his candidates match with Levon Aronian in 2007. Since then he played 10 tie breaks and won all 10. After the game, Carlsen said, "I got to say that he was a lot better than I was today, so he won absolutely deservedly." Well, congratulations to Dean Gliram for this brilliant performance. I hope that you enjoyed this game, and in the end let's also solve a simple chess puzzle where the task is to find checkmate into its white to move, and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. In the end, here are more suggestions for you. Feel free to check them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, Suren here, and in this video I want to share with you an interesting game played by Indian woman chess grandmaster Vaishali Ramesh Babu. Vaishali is Ramesh Babu Pragnananta's sister, and currently she is competing at World Girls Junior Championship. In this game her opponent is Ecuadorian woman international master Anahi Ortiz Verde Soto, and this game was played in round 1. But before starting our game, make sure that you are subscribed in order not to miss my future uploads. In this game, Vaishali Pragnananta was playing with white pieces and he opened up with e4. Ortiz Verde Soto responded with e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, we have the Ruy Lopez a6, Morphy defense, bishop a4, knight f6, d3. As you know, in here the main continuation starts with castling kingside, but of course this is also a popular line. This is the second most popular move after castling kingside. d6 by black, c3, bishop e7, white castles kingside, b5, bishop c2, black castles kingside, rook e1, and knight b8. Well, I have to tell you that instead of playing knight b8, in here the most popular move is d5, which leads to a very dynamic game. But in our game we have knight b8. Black is freeing the c-pawn's path, and in return white is establishing this classical pawn center, d4. Knight d7, knight d2, bishop b7, knight f1. This is a standard knight maneuver in Ruy Lopez. White will try to bring his knight on f5. Black played rook e8, a4 c5, knight g3, and g6. Black is not allowing knight f5 jump, but is doing it on the cost of weakening his dark squares. Here comes bishop h6, knight g4, bishop d2, queen c7, knight g5, knight f6, and f4. Vaishali is an aggressive player, and all the time she is looking for attacking chances. She takes d4, she takes d4, queen b6, and bishop e3. To which black responded with e takes f4, and already the position takes a very sharp character. Here we have a5, queen a7, despite the fact that this is a somewhat awkward square for the queen, but still black is keeping her queen on this diagonal. Bishop takes f4, and relying on the pin, black played knight e5, but this is a mistake. Instead, it was better to play h6, and if knight f3, then bishop f8. But in our game, we have knight e5. Here, white played king h1, unpinned the pawn, and already white wants to win a piece. That's why black moved her knight once again, played knight c6, and this time we have bishop b3. We have a target on f7. That's why in the previous variation I said that it was important to play h6 in order to kick away the knight from this active square, thus neutralizing any possible attacking chances on f7. Rook f8, bishop e3, right now the threat is d5, that's why black played queen b8 and rook f1. The rooks are for the open files, right? In this case we have a semi-open f file, and white will soon use the vulnerability of this f file. Bishop c8 and e5. Well, I have to tell you that already at this point going for knight takes f7 is playable. If rook takes f7, then bishop takes f7, and then bishop g5, intensifying the pin, and in some lines even knight h5 can be played, and this gives white a ferocious attack. But in our game after bishop c8 we have e5. This is also a strong move, but of course I have to tell you that it's not as strong as knight takes f7. and only after d takes e5, white went for bishop takes f7 move. Rook takes f7, queen b3, intensifying the pin, knight d8, and knight takes f7. Knight takes f7, bishop g5, and now by relying on the weakness of the f-file and this pin, white will finish up black. King g7 and knight e4. Instead of playing knight e4, bishop takes f6 is stronger. If bishop takes f6, then queen f3. If bishop f5, then after knight takes f5, g takes f5, white can announce a check from g3 and then can play rook takes f5. White's attack looks scary, soon the second rook will also join the attack, and all this looks very promising. But in our game after king g7, we have knight e4. Again, white is relying on these weaknesses. Black played bishop f5 and bishop takes f6 check. After several exchanges on f6, Vishali played g4, winning the light squared bishop. He takes d4, queen d5, knight d5, and after g takes f5, queen d8, queen e6 check. Black resigned because black is also losing her knight on e5. Well, this was a nice attack by Vaishali Ramesh Babu. This was actually the first time, right, that I published the game played by Pragnananta's sister. Let's wish her more successful performances, and I will see you in my next video. But meanwhile, forget to publish a puzzle, sorry. Please take a look at this position and try to find the winning line for white. It's white to move, and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. In the end, feel free to check out these suggestions as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, I have a very beautiful game for you played by Polish master Johannes Zukertort and German chess master Adolf Andersen. The game was played in 1865. Let's see how the game went on by these two strongest players of the 19th century. White started with e4, e5 by black, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, we see the Spanish game. Usually in this position black plays knight f6 or a6, but this time we see this a bit rare knight e7 move, which is the so-called Cosio defense. c3, d6, d4, bishop d7, white castles kingside, knight g6, and Zukertort chooses a very aggressive line starting with knight g5, h6, but this knight is not going to retreat back. Instead, Zukertort just sacrificed it on f7. King takes f7, bishop c4 check, and a bad move by black, king e7. A better move is king e8 in order not to block the diagonal of the queen. If queen h5, then black has this defensive queen f6 move. Though of course after f4 this is going to be a very sharp game. Let's go back. We see bishop c4 check, king e7, queen h5, queen e8, protecting the knight on g6, but a better move is queen c8, opening up a space for the king to escape. But after queen e8, white just checkmated his opponent in 2. Can you find white's next move? Well, Johannes Zukertort just played queen g5 check. Of course, bishop g5 check is also winning, but this looks very beautiful, and bishop takes g5, and we see a Boden mate on the board. What an amazing checkmate by Zukertort. Your comments and questions please, and thanks for watching. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, Suren here, and in this video I want to share with you a beautiful attacking game played by the 13th world chess champion Garry Kasparov. In this game Kasparov's opponent is Mephisto Chess Computer. The game was played during a 10-board blindfold simul which Kasparov gave in 1985 in Hamburg. In his book Garry Kasparov on Garry Kasparov, here is what the 13th world chess champion writes. And on the 7th June, also in Hamburg, I gave a blindfold simultaneous display on 10 boards. For the only time in my career, I considered the excessive strain experienced when playing blindfold to be damaging to one's health. One of my opponents again turned out to be a computer, and against it I announced a forced mate with sacrifices in 10 moves. The overall score was 8 wins, 2 draws. So in this game Kasparov was playing with the white pieces. That's how it goes during a simul, and he opened up with e4, to which Mephisto responded with e5. Knight f3, knight f6, and we have the good old Ruy Lopez. a6, Morphy defense, bishop a4, knight f6, Kasparov castled kingside, bishop e7, black is choosing the closed variations, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, d6, c3. White is not only preparing to establish a classical pawn center, but is also freeing the c2 square for the bishop. Black castled kingside, h3, preventing any bishop g4 jumps, and after knight a5 we have bishop c2. c5, as you know, this is the main line, and the players are choosing the most popular moves. Queen c7, d5. Well, in here, knight bd2 is considered to be more popular. If c takes d4, then c takes d4. If knight c6, then knight b3. This is how the main line goes, but in our game after queen c7, we have d5 by Kasparov, bishop d7, and b3. And now c4 can be met with b4 and b4 with c4. In both cases, white is locking up the queen side and can proceed with the attack on the king side. In our game after b3, we have queen b6, and this time Kasparov is developing his queen side knight. Knight bd2, rook c8, knight f1, h6, bishop e3, queen d8, queen d2, knight h7. We can see that the computer is confused and has no idea what's going on the board. As you know, in closed positions, the computers are really very bad. They are not managing to develop strategic plans, and especially in those times where the computers were very weak, this was a huge problem, you know. Even nowadays in closed positions, the engines are struggling. Knight g3, rook b8, and knight f5. White brought into life a standard knight maneuver, which is very common to the closed variations of Ruy Lopez. But in closed variations, usually black is playing g6, not h6, but g6, and bishop f8, strengthening the king side, and then bishop g7, not allowing knight f5 jumps. But as the computer weak, it messed up everything. Bishop takes f5, he takes f5, knight f6, another random move by the knight, and there we have it, g4, knight h7. This is crazy, guys. The computer is waiting for its death, you know. Rook b7, rook h1, while black is piddling around, Kasparov is putting his pieces on attacking squares. Knight f6, well, at this point it was better to play knight g5, but we have knight f6, yeah, f6 and h7 squares are the beloved fields of black horse. And there comes the rook, rook g1, queen b6, king f1, rook d7. Black freed the b7 square for the queen to attack this pawn, but who cares? There we have it, g5. At this point we can say that white's attack is irresistible. Yeah, black doesn't care about the safety of his king side, and all this is going to end up very sadly. Knight takes g5, queen b7. Finally black managed to take this pawn, but who cares? There we have it, knight e6, a devastating piece sacrifice with which Kasparov is opening up the g file for his rook. F takes e6, f takes e6, rook c7. We reached a position after which white has a forced mate in 9 moves. You can pause the video and try to find the mating line for white. Ready? I think that the move which Kasparov made just asks itself to be played, and that move is rook takes g7 sacrifice. King takes g7, bishop h6 check, king h8, and another powerful move, bishop g7 check. This time white is sacrificing the bishop in order to switching to the attack the queen with a check. King takes g7, probably bishop g7 is more difficult to find than rook takes g7, right? Queen g5 check, king f8, queen h6 check, king e8. Here comes the bishop, bishop g6 check, king d8. And after queen h8 check, resignation followed. Yeah, black king is in a mating net. If here, then here, and then knight e8, sorry, queen e8, checkmate. Yeah, a neat game by the 13th world chess champion. Of course, Mephisto's game was terrible, but who cares? Without sight of the board, Kasparov simply demolished the beast. In the end, a chess puzzle for you, where the task is to find the winning line for white. It's white to move, and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. Feel free to check them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, Soren here, and in this video I want to share with you an interesting game where Russian chess grandmaster Yefim Bogolyubov makes a brilliant tactical move. In this game his opponent is Austrian international master Hans Müller, and the game was played in 1934 in Triberg, which is a town in Germany. But before starting our game, make sure that you are subscribed in order not to miss my future uploads. As this was a blitz game, I will go quickly through the game, stopping only on the important parts. In this game, Bogolyubov was playing with the white pieces and he opened up with e4. Müller responded with e5, knight f3, knight c6 and bishop b5. We see Ruy Lopez a6 and bishop takes c6. Bogolyubov is choosing the exchange variation, d takes c6, knight c3, bishop c5. Well, I have to tell you that according to modern theory, in here the most popular move is f6, but of course there's nothing wrong with bishop c5 as well. d3, queen e7, bishop e3, knight f6, after which we have the exchange of dark squared bishops on c5. Now comes queen d2, bishop g4 and d4. So far so good, but in here Müller made a dubious move and played queen b4. Well, it's not quite clear why not e takes d4. Though I suppose that the reason for not going for e takes d4 is that this leads to huge simplifications, and probably that was the reason that Müller sidestepped this line. Instead he played queen b4, which is allowing white to gain advantage, and Bogolyubov simply munched the pawn on e5. And the thing is that despite the fact that the queen is on b4, black can't even capture on b2 because of this rook b1 move. That's why after knight takes e5, Müller castled queenside, and in return Bogolyubov castled kingside. Rook takes d4, which is another mistake by Müller, though Bogolyubov didn't use his chance and he didn't play this queen g5 move, which is allowing white to get a huge material advantage on the spot. But as this was a blitz game, Bogolyubov missed this powerful move. Instead he chose another strong move, queen e3, though this is not as strong as queen g5, bishop e6 and knight d5. Bogolyubov is freeing the c3 square with a tempo in order to meet c takes d5 with c3, but after knight d5 Müller played queen c5, and it was in here that Bogolyubov brought into life his brilliant move. As we have reached the critical position, please pause the video and try to find the winning move for white. Ready? Well, I'm sure that you will be proud of yourself if you can find that move, and still you have time to find that move. And that move is an absolutely staggering queen takes d4. To be honest guys, when I first saw this move, I was a bit confused, but soon figured out what's the idea hidden behind this brilliancy. In here, Hans Müller resigned in view of this line. Now if queen takes d4, then knight d7 check is coming, and wherever black puts his king on d8 or on b8, then knight takes c6 is coming, and in the end of the day we have a nice royal fork. Black is actually suffering heavy losses, and this is going to be an easy win for white. With such a huge material advantage, white can easily convert it into a victory. That's why after this devastating queen takes d4 move, Müller resigns. This is simply a majestic move, guys, and if you liked it, then feel free to share this beauty with your friends. Meanwhile, in the end, let's also solve a chess puzzle. This is an easy puzzle where the task is to find mate in 5. It's white to move, and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. Feel free to check them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, Soren here, and in this video I would like to share with you another interesting game played by Mikhail Tal against David Bronstein. In 1982, in the Georgian capital Tbilisi, Bronstein and Tal met in an unusual exhibition match where they played 8 games against each other simultaneously. Previously in 1978 in Yerevan, Bronstein had already played a simul on 4 boards against Rafael Vaganyan, which had ended in a draw. But this time, as mentioned above, they faced on 8 boards, which is a very tiring job. Here is how Tal comments that encounter. At first I felt uneasy about playing against 8 Bronsteins at once, but then I consoled myself with the thought that David would be fighting against 8 Tals. All the games were first-rate games, and Tal won the match with a score of 5-3. He won 4 games, drew 2 and lost 2. But before starting our game, if you are new to my channel, consider subscribing in order not to miss my future uploads. And now let's get started with our game and see what happened on the board. Tal opened up with e4 and Bronstein responded with e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. We have the Ruy Lopez and a very aggressive response by Bronstein f5. He goes for Schliemann defense, or this is also called Janisch gambit. Knight c3, this is the most common response to f5 and the one that presents black with the most difficulties. F takes e4, knight takes e4. Here black has several choices, can go for example for d5, a move which we have already seen a few days ago in a game played between Fischer and Matulovic, or can play bishop e7 or knight f6. In our game we have knight f6. Now comes queen e2, queen e7, we see the exchange of knights on f6 and white castles kingside. a6, bishop a4, b5. Meanwhile, black is advancing on the queen side, and then we have knight a5. Black wants to get rid of white's light-squared bishop, which later can create problems for black in case black wants to castle kingside. d4. As black king is still in the center, Tal wants to open up the position. Meanwhile, we have knight takes b3, a takes b3, bishop g7, and d takes e5, f takes e5. Here we have bishop g5, queen e6, and knight takes e5. Tal is simply winning a pawn. Here black castled kingside, but let's take a look at other variations as well. What if, for example, queen takes e5? Then in this case black can face serious problems after queen h5 check. If king f8, then rook e8 and white is winning. Or after knight takes e5. If move like bishop takes e5, then this time rook e1 is coming, and then queen h5 check, and then after the exchange of queens on g6, white can play f4, win back the sacrificed piece, and white even has better chances. But that's why in our game after knight takes e5 we have castling kingside. Now comes rook e1, bishop b7, f4 and rook e8. Here is how Bronstein comments this position. Black has lost a pawn, but his bishop is very active on a8 h1 diagonal. However, with his queen move, white is the first to start the attack. Here we have queen d2, white is targeting the pawn on d7 and d6, which is a total mistake, after which black's position collapses quickly. Instead of playing d6, it was better to remove this active knight from e5. Now if rook takes e5, then queen b6 check is coming, and then black can go for the exchange of rooks. Or if a move like f takes e5, then rook f1 check followed by queen takes e5. But in our game after queen d2 we have d6. Now comes knight c6, and after queen f7 Tal played rook e7. although he could also play knight e7 check and then play f5, f6, but in our game we have rook e7, which is also a strong move. Here we have the exchange of rooks on e7, king h8 and f5. This f-pawn is marching forward in order to strengthen the knight on e7. Bishop f6. Black wants to remove this dark squared bishop, which is supporting the knight. We have the exchange of bishops and rook e1. Still, Tal wants to keep his knight on that active square and at the same time wants to penetrate black's camp. Rook f7 was played and rook e6. Queen takes b2 and knight g6 check. A very beautiful move by Tal. The knight is untouchable because of this queen h6 check. If king g8 then rook e8 check followed by rook takes f8 checkmate. That's why Bronstein didn't dare to accept the sacrifice and played king g7. Already black wants to win this knight. That's why Tal played knight h4, but this is an inaccurate move. Instead of playing knight h4, it was better to play knight e7 with the threat of queen g5, queen g8 checkmate. But in our game we have knight h4, which allows black to defend. Right now the threat is queen h6 check followed by rook e8. White is creating mating threats. That's why Bronstein played king f8, queen g5 and queen d4 check. Not the best continuation. A move which could allow black to equalize the game was queen b1 check. If king f2 then queen takes c2 check and then queen c3. All the essential squares are covered and white can't do anything. The players have equal chances, but Bronstein played queen d4 check. Here comes king f1 and another mistake by Bronstein, bishop c8, which allows white to checkmate black king in 4 moves. Instead, it was better to announce a check from d1. If rook e1 then queen d4, and still, although white stands much better, but black can fight back. But in our game we have bishop c8, and now you can pause the video and try to find the mating line for white. Ready? In here again Tal went for this devastating knight g6 check. H takes g6 was played. Well, if king g8 then knight d7 check is coming followed by queen g8 checkmate. That's why Bronstein accepted the piece sacrifice, but after queen d8 check he resigned. If king g7 then rook takes g6 check is coming and then queen g8 checkmate. That's why, as I've already mentioned, after queen d8 check we have a resignation. Looks like that in the end Bronstein was very tired. He made several mistakes and Mikhail Tal managed to use his chance and with a beautiful knight sacrifice finished up his opponent. In the end, as usual, would like to ask you to solve a chess puzzle. Please take a look at this position and try to find the winning move for black. I will wait for your answer in the comment section. It's black to move. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. Consider checking them out as well, and I will see you in my next video. Hello chess lovers, Suren here, and in this video I want to share with you a little known but a brilliant chess miniature played by the 4th world chess champion Alexander Alekhin. His opponent is Dr. J. Forrester, and the game was played in 1923 in Glasgow. But before starting our game, make sure that you are subscribed in order not to miss my future uploads. This was a chess simul which Alekhin gave at 35 boards, and this game he opened up with e4. Forrester responded with e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. White goes for Ruy Lopez, a6, Morphy defense, bishop a4, knight f6, and a very rare continuation, knight c3. This is the 6th most popular move after castling kingside, d3, queen e2, d4, and bishop takes c6. In our game we have knight c3. Black responded with bishop c5, and using the vulnerability of this bishop on c5, Alekhin went for knight takes e5. Knight takes e5 and d4. Now he will win back the sacrificed piece. Bishop b4, d takes e5, knight takes e4, and queen d4 with a double attack. Black captured on c3, damaging white's pawn structure on the queen side, after which made a mistake and moved back his bishop on a5. And the problem with this move is that this is allowing white to put his bishop on a3 and take the total control over a3 f8 diagonal. Instead, it was better to keep the dark squared bishop on the diagonal by playing bishop e7. But in our game, as I've already mentioned, Forrester played bishop a5, and after this devastating bishop a3 move, he faced serious problems. Here, black proceeded with b6, but let's take a look. What if b5? What if black plays b5 in order to gain a tempo and then develop the light squared bishop? Then in this case, white not only can move back his bishop on b3, but can even castle queenside and sacrifice the light squared bishop. And if b takes a4, then this e6 move is coming and black is in trouble. If f takes e6, then queen takes g7. Though I have to tell you that this continuation is better than b6, because in this case, by capturing on c3 and then rook g8, black can somewhat prolong his resistance, though still black's position is totally lost. In our game, as I've already mentioned, Forrester proceeded with b6, but anyways, we have this powerful e6 move. Queen f6, black neutralized the threat, but stepped into bishop takes d7 check. King d8, bishop c6, discovered check. Alohan is going for a queen sacrifice. Black accepted the queen sacrifice, but by pushing forward his e-pawn, Alohan announced a checkmate. Truly a spectacular checkmate, right guys? As you know, I love checkmates with pawns, and here we have it. Two powerful white bishops are supporting the e-pawn, which is killing the enemy king. A nice finish by the legend. Well, in the end, let's also solve a chess puzzle where the task is to find the winning line for white. It's white to move, and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. Feel free to check them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, Soren here, and in this video I want to share with you a fantastic game from 2019 Croatia Grand Chess Tour. This game was played between Armenian chess grandmaster Levon Aronian and Russian chess grandmaster Sergei Karyakin. This game is taken from round 6, and Aronian, who was playing with the white pieces, opened up with e4. Karyakin responded with e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. We have the Ruy Lopez, against which Karyakin chose the Berlin defense. As you remember, in the early games, AlphaZero was quite enthusiastic about playing the French defense, but after 2 hours began to play it less and less, turned to Caro-Kann, and finally stopped on Berlin defense. And yes, as you know, Berlin is considered to be a reliable, solid weapon for black, but is very often avoided by white due to its drawish nature. Especially nowadays, white is usually avoiding the line with queen exchanges, but in this game, Aronian goes for that same line because he had some nice home preparations. Here, Aronian castled kingside, which is the main Berlin variation, and knight takes e4 by Karyakin. Another popular alternative is bishop c5. This is the classical Berlin, but in our game we have knight takes e4. Here, of course, Aronian could avoid the line with queen exchanges by going for rook e1, but after knight takes e4, he chose d4. The Hermit variation is coming, and after knight d6, we first see bishop takes c6, and then d takes e5, knight f5, and the queens are exchanged. We are in the endgame where, though black has moved his king, but has a nice bishop pair and a very solid position. h3 by Aronian. Usually in here, white is playing knight c3 or rook d1 check. These are the main moves, but in our game we have h3, bishop e7, knight c3, knight h4. We have the exchange of knights on h4 and f4. I checked in the database, and it turns out that this is a novelty. Before this, usually bishop e3 was chosen. For example, Vacher, Legraf and Navarra chose this line, but in our game we have f4. The f-pawn is coming to support the e-pawn, and let's see what's in Aronian's mind. Bishop d7, bishop d2, king c8, bishop e1, bishop e7, and this time we have f5. These white pawns look very powerful, and now Aronian will look for a way to push them forward. Bishop c5 check was played, bishop f2, bishop b4. All the time Karyakin is avoiding the exchange of bishops. He wants to keep his bishop pairs, rook e8, bishop g3, and bishop c5 check. After the game, Aronian suggested bishop takes c3 and then b6 in order to bring the king on b7 and connect the rooks, but Karyakin still decided to keep his bishops, and he announced a check. King h2, bishop d4, rook e1, b6, knight d1, king b7, c3, bishop c5, knight f2, bishop e7. A mistake after which Black is facing serious problems. Well, in here it was not too late to go for bishop takes f2, exchange the dark squared bishop with the knight, and then play c5 with the idea of activating this light squared bishop by bringing it on the long diagonal, but in our game we have bishop e7, and there it goes. e6 is on the board, and after f takes e6, f takes e6, white is gaining a powerful passed pawn on the e file, and at the same time is demoralizing Black's army by forcing this light squared bishop to step forward, thus imprisoning the rook on a8. Knight d3, bishop f6, and another heavy punch by Aronian. Rook takes f6. The most beautiful and daring move in this game. Aronian goes for an exchange sacrifice in the style of Iron Tigran. G takes f6, but now let's see where's white's compensation. Actually, by going for the exchange sacrifice, white managed to get rid of Black's dark squared bishop, and now, by going for bishop h4, white will emphasize the vulnerability of this diagonal and this pawn. Knight f4, rook d8. Black is looking for a counterplay, but there is nothing Black can do. Meanwhile, we have bishop h4, the dark squared bishop is coming after this pawn on f6, and the pawn drops, king c6, e7, bishop d7. Finally, Black managed to activate his light squared bishop, but still, though white's position is overwhelming, but there are some technical problems to solve. I have to tell you that the computer gives both sides equal chances, but from a practical point of view, it's easier to play with the white pieces, and Aronian was like blitzing out moves while Karyakin was burning time. Here we have bishop e8, knight e6, bishop h5, rook f2, bishop g6, h4, king d7, knight f4, bishop b1, a3, rook g8, knight g2. We see some maneuverings by both sides. Both players are looking for better squares for their pieces. Rook e2, king e6. From here on, Karyakin is choosing a wrong strategy. He wants to bring his king on this f7 square, but that's a terrible idea, which is losing. Instead, it was better to acquire a waiting strategy and move his rook on the d file. If knight e5 check, then king e6, no problem at all for Black, but instead we have king e6, king g3, king f7, and the problem with this idea of bringing the king on this f7 square is that now at some point white will play h5 and will announce a check from e5, force Black king to move back, and then we'll go for g6 advancement. Here we have king f4, Aronian unpinned his knight, h6, and rook e1, h takes g5 check, h takes g5. White managed to gain the second passed pawn, bishop a2, knight g4, rook h3, and knight e5 check is on the board. King e6, king g4, rook h7, knight f3 discovered check, king f7 and king f5 with a devastating g6 threat. Here Karyakin moved back his king on g8, but anyways g6 is on the board. Rook h5 check, king g4, rook h6, and knight h4. With this move, Aronian imprisoned Black rook, and now the threat is king g5. Black rook is trapped. Here Karyakin made a desperate bishop f7 move, but after g takes f7 check, king takes f7, bishop g5, he resigned. Let's take a look at one of the possible lines how white can win. For example, if rook e6, then white can first announce a check from f1 and then can penetrate the 8th rank with his rook. Of course, still there are some technical problems to solve, but white's position is totally winning. And then knight f5 is coming with knight h6 threat. That's why after bishop g5, Karyakin resigned. A very impressive game by Levon Aronian. He managed to break into pieces that super solid Berlin defense by demonstrating really very high chess skills. Even went for an exchange sacrifice in the endgame, which is a pretty rare phenomenon in the endgame, and all the time by creating problems for his opponent, managed to force him to make a mistake and won the game. In the end, as usual, a chess puzzle for you. Please take a look at this position and try to find that winning move for white. It's white to move, and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. For more games, consider to check out these suggestions as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, Soren here, and in this video I would like to share with you a fascinating attacking blitz game played by Bobby Fischer. His opponent is Yugoslav chess grandmaster Milan Matulovic, and the game was played in 1970 in Herceg Novi, which is a town in Montenegro. Fischer didn't like blitz chess, which according to him stifles creative ideas, but even in blitz Fischer demonstrated sharp tactical skills and creative ideas. The following game is a nice example. But before starting our game, make sure that you are subscribed to my channel in order not to miss my future uploads. And now let's go for our game and see what happened on the board. Fischer opened up with e4 and Matulovic responded with e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, we have the Ruy Lopez, and in here Matulovic played f5. He goes for Schliemann defense. Here is what Fischer writes about this move. This is Matulovic's specialty, the same as his gambit in the Sicilian defense. In blitz games there are no problems for white because of black king's weakness. I know this variation very well, and because of that I was surprised at Matulovic's choice. Here we have knight c3, f takes e4, knight takes e4, d5, knight takes e5, d takes e4, and in return Fischer won the knight on c6, queen g5, black is attacking white bishop, and according to Fischer, instead of playing queen g5, queen d5 could create more problems for white, but according to engine, both moves are strong. After queen g5, Fischer played queen e2, both protected the bishop and at the same time attacked black pawn, and also at some point we will see that the queen on the second rank will be very useful. Knight f6, and we have f4. Fischer is sacrificing his pawn and is protecting his pawn on g2. Queen takes f4, and this time we have d4. Queen h4 check, g3, queen h3. Here is what Fischer writes. The same was played in the game Gheorghiu Maric, Skopje 1968. Gheorghiu played knight a7 check, but he did not get any advantage in this position. I analyzed this position all night with Robac and Gheorghiu in Vinkovci. Gheorghiu showed me that game against Maric, and it was very interesting for me. Our idea was bishop g5, and in this game Fischer went for bishop g5, which is also Angie's first choice, and yes, looks like that Fischer analyzed this variation carefully, and as you have already learned, he is still in his preparations. White wants to remove the knight and win the pawn. a6, bishop a4, bishop d7, and we have it. Bishop takes f6, g takes f6, queen takes e4 check, king f7. Well, black could also play queen e6 and go for the endgame. This is even better. If knight a5 check, then king f7, and if knight takes b7, then rook b8. In return, black will win the pawn on b2, and after castling queenside, rook b8. Although white has an extra pawn and has a slight advantage, but black has a powerful bishop pair and can fight for a draw. But in our game, after queen takes e4, we have king f7. This looks a bit scary, and knight e5, a powerful answer by Fischer. He is sacrificing his knight and thus is managing to open up the f file. F takes e5 is forced, otherwise black could lose his bishop. That's why we have f takes e5 and rook f1 check. Although I have to tell you that rook f1 is not the most precise move, bishop b3 is even better, and only then rook f1 check. And if king g8, then white can go for d5. This allows white to gain a devastating attack. If queen g4, then queen e3. White has great attacking chances. By the way, moving back the bishop is not a good idea, because in this case white can get a powerful passed pawn on the 7th rank. Queen e6 is very important in order not to allow unpleasant checks from a to g8 diagonal, after which white can capture on b7, but yes, black has no chance to survive, and then white will also win this pawn. White is winning. But in our game, after f takes e5, we have rook f1 check, king e7, bishop takes d7, king takes d7, and rook f7 check, king e8. According to Fischer, bishop e7 could give black good chances for a successful defense, and yes, this is a strong move, but in our game we have king e8, which allows white to win this pawn on c7. Bishop d6, rook takes b7, meanwhile white is winning another pawn, rook c8, white castles queenside, and queen takes h2, which is a total mistake, after which black is losing. So far so good, black was managing to defend, but by going for queen takes h2, black is placing his queen out of the game. Instead, it was better to play rook f8, and if d takes e5, then bishop e7. At any moment, black can try to bring his king on a safety, but in our game, after castling queenside, we have queen takes h2, and now comes d takes e5, bishop e7, which allows white to mate in 8 moves. Please pause the video and try to find Fischer's next move. Ready? In here, Fischer played rook takes e7 check. He goes for the exchange sacrifice, and thus by removing the bishop is making black king defenseless. Fischer writes, after this move black has no hope. Maybe I had an easier way to win, but thought I had not enough time. As a matter of fact, I had 3 minutes. But this rook takes e7 is very precise. Also, queen a4 allows white to checkmate black king in 8 moves. Although I have to tell you that after the sacrifice of the rook, Fischer failed to find the shortest possible mating line, but that's not important. In this case, all roads lead to Rome, and now let's see how Fischer will finish up his opponent in this devastating king hunt. After king takes g3, we have queen g4 checkmate. Look at this brutal checkmate, guys. A very instructive and nice attacking game by legendary Bobby Fischer. In the end, as usual, would like to ask you to solve a chess puzzle. Please take a look at this position and try to find the winning move for white. I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. Consider checking them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, Suren here, and in this video I want to share with you an interesting game which was played in round 1 at current 2019 European Team Championship, with the white piece is playing Danish international master Jonas Buhl-Bjerre and his opponent is Russian chess grandmaster Daniil Dubov. But before starting our game, make sure that you are subscribed in order not to miss my future uploads. As I've already mentioned, Bjerre was playing with the white pieces and he opened up with e4. Dubov responded with e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. We have the Ruy Lopez a6, Morphy defense, bishop a4, knight f6, white castles kingside, bishop e7, black is going for closed variations, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, and black also castles kingside. Now we reached a very popular position where white has a wide range of choices. Now if you play a move like c3, then black can go for martial attack and can play d5. That's why usually white is avoiding this sharp and complicated line, and instead of playing c3 is choosing moves like a4 or h3 or d4 or d3, which are known as anti-martial moves. But the interesting thing is that in here, Bierre went for this anti-martial a4 move, but anyways, Dubov went for d5. I have to tell you that this is a very rare continuation, and in here usually black is either playing bishop b7 or b4. But in our game we have this rare and provocative d5 move. I have to tell you that I checked up in my database, and from strong players only Ivan Sokolov and Alexander Shabalov had chosen this line. But of course I have to tell you that there were only a few games available with this line. In here Bierre played e takes d5, but according to the engine the best move is a takes b5. Let's take a quick look at this line suggested by Stockfish, where in the end of the day white is getting an extra pawn. Though I have to tell you that still things are not so clear, and despite the fact that white has an extra pawn, black has a compensation, black is leading in development and has nice attacking chances. But in our game after d5, as I've already mentioned, Bierre played e takes d5. Dubov responded with knight a5, knight takes e5, knight takes b3, and c takes b3. Well, knight c6 looks tempting, but black has a powerful defensive resource, bishop g4. The idea is that knight f3, then bishop c5 check is coming. Of course, this is also leads to massive complications, but in the end of the day, black is doing just great. No problem at all. But in our game, after knight takes b3, we have c takes b3, bishop b7, knight c6, bishop takes c6, d takes c6, bishop c5. Right now white has two extra pawns, but still white needs to solve the development of his queenside pieces, which requires time, while already black has created a threat. Here Bierre played d3, but this is too passive. Playing d4 and giving up the pawn is better. In that case, white could somewhat speed up his development, but in our game we have d3, to which Dubov responded with a very interesting bishop takes f2 sacrifice. Well, I have to tell you that after this sacrifice, the engine is evaluating the position as equal, but from white's perspective, it's difficult to find the best defensive moves. And it was in here that actually white made a mistake and played bishop e3, which is losing. Instead, it was better to play either king g3 or king f3 or king f1. Those two moves look a bit scary. But in our game we have bishop e3, and let's see how Dubov managed to finish up his opponent. Here comes the knight g4 check, and after king f3 we have knight takes e3. Black is removing that defender which was attacking black queen, after which here comes the rook e8. There's just no time, to switch into the defense these queenside pieces, and using that fact black is winning. Rook e2. Well, if a move like rook takes e8, then after rook takes e8, again black is winning. If queen d2 covering the e3 square, then rook e6 is coming, and once the rook is also joining the attack, white has no chance to save the game. Here is one of the possible lines which could arise after the exchange of rooks, and then white is losing his rook and black's position is totally winning. In our game after rook e8 we have rook e2 and queen f6 check, king g3 and g5. A powerful move, and I have to tell you that Dubov is simply playing a precise game. The threat is queen f4 check followed by queen h4 checkmate. White played rook f2, but this time black queen harassed white king from d6 square, king h3, queen h6 check, king g4, and after queen h4 check finally white resigned. If king f5, then queen d4 is coming with a threat of rook e6 followed by queen d6, and if king takes g5, then h6 is coming and black king is quickly getting checkmated. That's why after queen h4 check on move 23, Bierre resigned. Well, with that rare line, Dubov managed to surprise his opponent and very quickly managed to beat him. After the game, during the interview, he Here is how Dubov commented his move. If it works, then it's a groundbreaking discovery. So I would also like to know your opinion. Was that d5 move a groundbreaking discovery or just a simple trick? In the end, let's also solve a chess puzzle, which is also taken from a game played by Daniel Dubov, where the task is to find mate in 3. It's white to move, and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. Feel free to check them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, Soren here, and in this video I want to share with you a brilliant attacking game played by Indian chess grandmaster Surya Ganguly. His opponent is Kazakhstani chess grandmaster Anwar Ismagambetov, and the game was played in 2006 in New Delhi. But before starting our game, first want to sharpen your tactical skills. Please take a look at this position and try to find the mating line for white. It's white to move, and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Back to our main board, and now without further ado, let's get started with this fascinating game and see what happened on the board. Ganguly opened up with e4 and Ismagambetov responded with e5. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. We have the Ruy Lopez, knight f6, black is choosing the Berlin defense, white castles kingside, knight takes e4, d4, knight d6, and bishop a4. Not the most popular continuation, usually in here white is capturing on c6, but in our game we have bishop a4. This is the Showalter variation. Here comes e takes d4, c3, and bishop e7. Well, black could also capture on c3, though I have to tell you that this looks a bit risky because in this line, as a compensation for 2 pawns, white is gaining a ferocious attack. White actually has a very active position and is difficult to play with the black pieces. That's why after c3, black played bishop e7. Here we have c takes d4, black castles kingside, knight c3, and knight f5. This is the first inaccuracy in this game. Instead of playing knight f5, it was better to play knight c4 with the idea of meeting d5 with knight e5. But in our game we have knight f5, and the problem with this move is that after d5, what are you going to do with your knight? Here Ismagambetov moved back the knight on its initial square, which, believe me, is not a pleasant choice at all. d6, another powerful move by Ganguly, with which he is gaining a precious time to make his pieces more active. Bishop c2 was played. This bishop now will support the queen from behind. Knight e8. Black wants to bring his knight on f6 square, and also in some cases wants to open up the bishop's diagonal in order to develop it. Rook e1, knight c6. Well, playing c6 and then playing d5 is better. If queen d3, then g6, and if bishop h6, then according to the engine, there's no need to worry. You can play d5 and allow white to win this rook. Solving the development of the queenside pieces is of course more important than this rook, but in our game after rook e1 we have knight c6. Here comes knight d5, g6. Well, with this move black is weakening his kingside too much. Instead it was better to play d6, and if queen d3, then f5. But in our game we have g6, and later in our game we will see how Ganguly will make use of the weaknesses of the long diagonal. Here comes bishop h6, knight g7, which is a total blunder. Well, it was better to play bishop f6 and allow white to win that rook, but in our game we have knight g7, to which Ganguly answered with a powerful move, and he went for an exchange sacrifice. Look at this beautiful exchange sacrifice, guys, with which white is removing black's dark squared bishop, and already black king is becoming very vulnerable. Knight takes e7. Here we have bishop g5, a very unpleasant pin for black, rook e8, and knight f6 check. This is a total destruction, guys. Black pieces are on the 7th rank, while this bishop and the knight all the time are harassing black king. King h8, this time we have queen d4. Already white wants to play knight takes e8. Black played rook f8, moved away his rook, and as we have reached the critical position, please pause the video and try to find white's next moves. Ready? In here, Surya Ganguly went for a piece sacrifice and captured on h7, though I have to tell you that queen h4 is also very strong. That is to meet h5 with knight takes h5 with a ferocious attack. But in our game we have knight takes h7, king takes h7, queen h4 check, king g8, and there it goes, bishop takes e7, queen e8, and this time the knight is coming with a direct mating threat, knight h5, and a beautiful queen sacrifice by Ganguly, queen takes h5, this is move 24, and we have it, a queen sacrifice. In here, black resigned in view of the following lines. Now, if a move like g takes h5, which is forced, then white can play bishop f6 with bishop h7 mating threat. And now all black can do is to give away his rook in order to gain a precious time and open up an escaping square for his king, but after bishop d5, white's position is totally winning. If rook e6, then knight takes e6, and white can easily convert this position to a victory. That's why after this impressive queen takes h5 sacrifice, we have a resignation. A very, very impressive game by Surya Ganguly, which I hope that you enjoyed greatly. Well, thanks for watching. Feel free to share this game with your friends as well. Let them know about this beauty. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Mikhail Tal's forehead bore the scars of a fearful blow to the head by a bottle in Havana night bar during the Olympiad in Cuba in 1966. There was a well-known joke by Petrosian at that time. Only someone with the robust health of Tal could endure such a blow. Hello chess lovers, Soren here, and in this video I want to take a look at the first game which Mikhail Tal played after being recovered from that severe blow in the bar. For a more detailed information of what happened and why the Coca-Cola bottle landed on his forehead, please check out the link which I will pin in the comment section, and also it's available in the card section. Here it is. I have to tell you that Tal could only join the tournament from round 5, where the Soviet team faced Uruguay team. After the thrown Coca-Cola bottle wounded Tal's forehead, it was covered with stitches and the magician from Riga was wearing dark glasses. In this game, Tal's opponent is Alfredo Oliveira, who won Uruguayan chess championship 5 times. Mikhail Tal, who was on the white side, opened up with e4, to which Oliveira responded with e5. Knight f3, knight c6, and bishop b5. We have the Spanish game, a6, Morphy defense, bishop a4, knight f6, white castled kingside, bishop e7, black is going for the closed variations, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, d6, c3, bishop g4. I have to tell you that in here the most popular move is considered to be castling kingside, after which white is usually playing h3, preventing bishop g4 jump, but in our game black first decided to pin white knight by playing bishop g4, h3, bishop h5, and not paying attention that the knight on f3 is pinned, Tal established this classical pawn center. This is a very aggressive move which leads to a pawn sacrifice. Bishop takes f3, black is luring away white queen from the d file and then is winning white's central pawn. E takes d4, queen g3, white is attacking the pawn on g7, but other good alternative is queen d3, a move which Judith Polgar made in a game against Nigel Short in 1996. But in our game we have queen g6, to which black answered with a very dubious king f8 move. Very soon this king f8 is going to become a major reason for black's problems. Instead, it was better to castle kingside, and it's not quite clear why black didn't make this move. If bishop h6, then black can neutralize all possible threats by playing knight e8. But in our game, after queen g3, we have king f8. Here comes queen d3. Tal first put black's king on a very awkward square and then played queen d3. Wants to play c takes d4, black captured on c3, and we have knight takes c3, knight e5, queen e2. If we have a look at the position, white is a pawn down, but relying on the fact that white has a nice bishop pair, and also this king is on a very awkward square. White has a compensation. Here black played c5 and bishop e3, b4, knight d5, knight takes d5, bishop takes d5. The light squared bishop is occupying a very nice attacking square, and there comes the rook d1. White is centralizing his pieces. And now it's not quite clear how is black going to activate this rook, and if black tries to castle by hand and play a move like g6, then can step into very unpleasant bishop h6 check. That's why in here Oliveira decided to play g5. With this move, black is blocking the c1 h6 diagonal, is preventing bishop h6 check, and wants to castle by hand, but this is weakening black's king side too much. Here comes queen h5, bishop f6, and there it goes, f4. G takes f4, bishop takes f4, and rook g8. Relying on the fact that right now white can't capture on h7 because of this knight f3 check, black wants to activate his rook, but Tal is not the player who is interested in pawns. He played rook f1, a subtle and at the same time a powerful move. Right now white wants to play bishop takes e5 and rely on the vulnerability of d and f files. Rook g6, black is blocking this diagonal, but finally after white's queen takes h7, Oliveira decided to resign. Right now white is threatening bishop takes e5, and if you play a move like queen e7, then white can play rook f2 followed by rook f1. Yes, doubling up the rooks on the f file can allow white to put a very useful pressure down the f file. That's why, understanding that his position is hopeless, after queen takes h7, Oliveira resigned, although I would have liked to see him making few more moves and allowing the dust to settle. All in all, in this game black failed to put an adequate resistance and got crushed very quickly. Well, in the end, let's also solve a chess puzzle where the task is to find the winning move for black. It's black to move, and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Once again, I would strongly recommend to check out the link which I will put in the comment section, and I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, I have a very beautiful game for you played by Garry Kasparov against Peter Leko. The game was played in 2001 in Linares. Kasparov started with e4 and e5 by Leko. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, we see the Spanish game, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, white castles, bishop e7, Leko is choosing the closed variation, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, black castles, and a4. By playing this move, Kasparov is avoiding the martial attack. In some cases, we can say that this a4 move is like an anti-martial move. Bishop b7, d3, d6, knight d2, knight a5, bishop a2, c5, knight f1, rook e8, knight e3, h6, bishop d2, c4, bishop c3. At some point this bishop can be useful and can support d4 advancement. Queen b6, knight d2, knight c6, knight d5, knight takes d5, e takes d5, and the knight again retreats to a5 square, but now Kasparov is capturing on a5, queen takes a5, d takes c4, and queen takes a4. A very courageous decision by Peter Leko. But on the other hand, if a move like b4, the compensation for the lost pawn looks insufficient. That's why after d takes c4, we see queen takes a4, but now comes a strong response by Kasparov, c5. Using the power of this bishop and also the fact that the queen on a4 is misplaced. Now capturing on c5 is not possible because of this d6. Now the bishop is attacked, also white is threatening. Bishop takes f7 check, winning the queen. After c5, Leko played queen b4. Now comes knight e4. Again, capturing on c5 can't be played because first white can play c3, If queen takes b2, then rook e2, placing the queen on a file, and after queen a3, white can play d6, again with the same dangerous threat. But after knight e4, Leko decided to grab the pawn on b2, but this is going to be very dangerous. Now Kasparov is capturing on d6, getting powerful passed pawns. Bishop f8, c3, f5, now comes d7. White is gaining important tempos to push his pawns forward. Rook d8, d6 check, king h8, knight c5. Now pay attention please, this knight is starting a very dangerous journey. Right now the bishop is attacked. Bishop c6, now comes knight d3, forking the queen and the pawn on e5. Queen takes c3, knight takes e5. Leko played a desperate bishop e4, but now comes knight takes f7 check. Just have a look, this knight is just dancing all around the board. King h7, but of course this knight is not here to capture this poor rook. Of course, that is also winning. But Kasparov played knight g5 check. Looks like this is not a knight. This is a Springer. Yes, just like that. And believe it or not, but in this position, Leko resigned. Black can't capture on g5 because of this queen h5 checkmate, or if a move like after knight g5 check king h8, then the knight again can jump on e4 square, and then white can start exploit the weaknesses of the light squares. If king h7, then queen g8 check, king g6, bishop f7 check, king f6, bishop d5. If just a random move, rook b8, then queen e6 check, king g5, h4 check, and black king is just getting checkmated. Poor king is getting checkmated. A very impressive game, I think, played by Garry Kasparov. Especially I liked that knight maneuvers all around the board. I hope that you enjoyed this game. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, let's have a look at a game played by Vladimir Vukovic and an amateur chess player. The game was played in 1926. Vukovic started with e4, e5 by black, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, we see the Spanish game, and black goes for Berlin defense by playing knight f6. Usually in this position white is castling kingside, but this time we see this rare continuation d4, e takes d4, e5, knight e4. Nowadays this line is not popular because this gives white no advantage. Well, castling in this position is better, but we see bishop f4 move, which gives black a chance to gain advantage by playing bishop b4 check, though we didn't see that move in the game. If knight d2, then a6, and after bishop d3, knight c5, and the question arises, where is white's compensation? Black is a pawn up. But after bishop f4, we see a bad move by black f5, which weakens black's kingside. Bishop takes c6, d takes c6, queen takes d4, queen d5, knight c3, queen a5. Well, instead of playing queen a5, black could have win a pawn by playing knight takes c3. If queen takes c3, then queen e4 check, and then black could capture on c2. But instead we see this queen a5 move, rook d1, bishop e7, bishop d2, queen b6, knight e2, and a bad move by black, bishop c5. This is already a blunder. It seems like this is a good move which attacks the queen and also puts pressure on this f2 pawn, but this allows white to checkmate black in the most beautiful way. Can you find the mating line? Ready? Well, Vukovic sacrificed his queen on d8. King takes d8, and now bishop g5 double check, king e8, and rook d8 check. Well, you may ask, but this is not an opera made. Black has this king f7 move, and where is the checkmate? And here is the checkmate, e6 check, opening up this e5 square for the knight. King takes e6, knight f4 check, king f7, and knight e5 checkmate. What a brilliant checkmate by Vladimir Vukovic. Your comments and questions please, and thanks for watching. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, let's have a look at a very interesting game played by Magnus Carlsen and Hans Harestad. The game was played in 2003. Actually at that time Carlsen was 12 years old. His rating at that time was 2385 and his opponent's rating was 2249. Let's see how the game went on. Carlsen started with e4, e5 by black, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. We see Spanish game, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, white castles, b5, bishop b3, bishop e7, rook e1, d6, c3, black castles, h3, knight a5, opening up a space for the pawn to advance, bishop c2, c5, d4, queen c7, knight bd2, and a very dubious move, knight c6. It's better to take on d4 and then after c takes d4 play bishop b7. But after knight c6, white has this d5 move and black played knight d8. Let's compare these positions. This position where black knight can jump to c4 square, and this position of course can be very unpleasant for black. Carlsen played a4, rook a7, protecting the rook in case you take on b5, and then after recapture already this rook on a7 is defended. Knight f1, g6. By playing g6, black is weakening his dark squares, but at the same time takes under the control this f5 square in case you try to move your knight to f5 square. Now bishop h6, rook e8, knight g3, knight d7, knight h2, f6, bishop e3, knight b6, a takes b5, a takes b5, bishop d3. A better move is rook takes a7, queen takes a7, and h4, starting an attack in the king side. But we see bishop d3 move instead, bishop d7, queen d2, knight f7, rook takes a7, queen takes a7, queen e2, queen a6, protecting the pawn, knight g4, king g7, protecting the h6 square, bishop c1. White is opening up a space for the queen to move to this diagonal, c1 h6 diagonal. Knight a4, bishop c2, rook a8, queen e3, c4, rook f1, white is preparing f4 break, knight c5, and now comes knight h6, trying to get rid of this knight on f7, knight g5, and f4 by Carlsen. E takes f4, queen takes f4, and a very simple tactics by black, bishop takes h3. Of course, if you recapture the bishop, then after knight takes h3, white can lose the game because of this fork. But it turns out that this bishop takes h3 move is losing the game. A better move is taking on h6. If h4, pinning the knight, then rook f8. H takes g5, f takes g5, queen h4 check, king g7, bishop takes g5, rook takes f1 check, knight takes f1, bishop takes g5, queen takes g5. Well, white has a slight advantage, but this continuation would have been better for black. But instead we see bishop takes h3 move. Now comes queen h4, bishop retreats back, and now a very strong move by Carlsen. Can you find that move? Ready? He played e5. sacrificing the pawn in order to open this b1 h7 diagonal. Black took on e5, and now knight h5. G takes h5. Well, if king h8, then simply bishop takes g5 is winning, and if f takes g5, then queen g3 can be very strong. Black is definitely in trouble. But after knight h5 check, we see g takes h5, and now in this position, white played a very strong move. Can you find that move? Ready? Queen takes g5 check. We see a queen sacrifice. Black took on g5 and now rook f7 check. King takes h6 and rook takes h7 checkmate. What a beautiful checkmate. Now can you understand how important it was to open up this diagonal by sacrificing the pawn on e5? An amazing game by a 12-year-old chess player. Your comments and questions please, and thanks for watching. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, Suren here with another very dramatic game, where the white piece is playing Serbian chess grandmaster Alexander Matanovic and his opponent is Dutch chess grandmaster Jan Hein Donner. The game was played in 1965 in huge wins. This is a game which Donner called a crime against chess, but let's see what's wrong with this game. Matanovic opened up with e4 and Donner responded with e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, we have Ruy Lopez a6 Morphy defense, bishop a4 b5, bishop b3, knight a5. Donner goes for Norwegian variation. Here the most popular move is castling kingside. This is what modern elite players are choosing, but in our game after knight a5, Matanovic went for d4. E takes d4, queen takes d4, and a terrible blunder by Donner d6. Instead of playing d6, it was better either to fianchetto the light squared bishop or play knight d7, or even knight takes b3 is playable, but in our game we have d6. Here is what Donner writes about this move. For such a move, no typesetter will have enough question marks at his disposal. And now you can pause the video and try to find the winning move for white. Ready? In here, Matanovic went for bishop takes f7 check. Look at this. This was the move which Donner overlooked. Donner writes, many players would have resigned on the spot, but that was a bit too much. I felt losing on the 8th move, so I made a few more moves, and Donner accepted the bishop sacrifice. Here comes queen d5 check. Bishop e6, black is both covering his king and also already the rook is protected, but now the knight is joining the attack. Knight g5 check, king e8 and knight takes e6. c6, this time we have queen h5 check, g6, queen f3, another targeted piece, queen e7, and we have knight takes f8. Another thing is that black can't even recapture because of this queen c3 move, and this is actually total destruction, guys. After knight takes f8, Donner played knight c4, and in here white simply castled kingside. Knight f6, and this time we have bishop h6, knight e5, queen c3, knight g4, and f4. In return, black counterattacked white queen, but this time we have queen h3, knight takes h6, f takes e5, rook takes f8. So far so good. Matanovic was playing an excellent chess and he has a winning position, but in here he made a terrible mistake and captured on h6. About this move, Donner writes, perhaps he was annoyed at my abominable play and went for this queen takes h6 move. Instead of playing queen takes h6, it was better to go for the exchange of rooks and then develop the knight. Black can't even capture on e5 because of this queen e6 check, and If a move like rook d8, then simply rook f1 and then knight c4. This is a total destruction, guys. But in our game, after rook takes f8, as I've already mentioned, Matanovic won the knight on h6. And in here, believe it or not, but Donner announced a check from a7 and Matanovic resigned. Look at this, guys. This was the move which Matanovic missed, and he's actually getting checkmated. If king h1, then rook takes f1, checkmate. Donner writes, "It took a while before I realized I had won. A strange sensation. The emotions caused by such a rare piece of luck are indescribable. One feels a triumph greater than after clinching a well-deserved victory in the finest attacking game." For Matanovic, understandably, it wasn't much of a pleasure. An hour later, he still sat staring at the board, which had meanwhile been cleared, bewildered and not understanding. In the end, would like to ask you to solve a chess puzzle. Please take a look at this position and try to find the winning move for white. I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. If you liked this crazy game, give the thumbs up. For more games, consider subscribing to my channel. Also, press the bell button to get notified about new uploads. I will see you in my next video. Take care.